Crack it open. We're doing it again. Another stream thing. Only this time it's a different kind of stream thing. So this is going to be a new show that I'm going to be doing every Wednesday, same time as Shit Shootin' Sunday. And this show will be focused around news. So, like, instead of discussing a core, like, philosophical or practical topic, we're going to be going over something that happened in the sort of intermediary week. I have some people interested who can't show up today, but who might be able to show up next Wednesday. And I have some people who are interested in showing up today, but can't show up quite yet. So they'll be popping in and out. And that's part of the beauty, I think, of having a 3-hour stream, is that you can sort of afford to pop in and out like that. So also just realized that my microphone is not set to the good quality one, so that's unfortunate. There we go. That should be slightly better quality. For those of you listening in audio, that should have been a welcome transition right there. Let me make sure that I get that. So, without further ado, let me get some housekeeping out of the way. This production, if you could call it that, is brought to you by Brave Browser, the ad-free, tracker-free browsing experience. One moment. Let me make sure that I'm still in this call. Can one of y'all unmute your mic real quick?
Yeah, dude, you're still here.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I don't know why, but for some reason this thing just brought up my extension menu. Whatever. So where was I? It's brought to you by Brave Browser, which is not the thing that opened my extension menu just now. The ad-free, fucking tracker-free browsing experience. It's also brought to you by Liberty Mugs, the mug experience you can use to piss off your co-workers with anti-state messages. It's also brought to you by CryptoTab, the extension you can use in Chrome-based browsers to use spare CPU power to mine Bitcoins, along with a bunch of other people. And if you get enough people in on it, you get like a nice passive income. So it's something to consider. But there are also many other ways to support the show. You can check the link in the description for other ways to do that. There's a Steemit link to an article that I wrote about ways to support the show in the description of every one of the productions that I do. So feel free to click that and see if you want to do any of those things. Why don't you both introduce yourself? Order doesn't really matter. Tell us a little bit about what interested you in this show, what interested you in sort of being into anti-state, whatever you were into. I realize that we have like a couple people that have never been on the stream before, so take as much time as you want to. This is already off to a fantastic start. Anyway, either one of you, just start introducing yourself.
Go for it, Zach.
All right. Yeah. So as far as how I got into anti-statism, like I grew up conservative for the most part for most of my life, and then around 2012 election, you know, I heard some of Ron Paul, of course, and when he was talking about foreign policy, in particular in the GOP debates, that's what piqued my interest. And I didn't end up voting for him or anyone in that election, which was actually the first election that presidential election that I could have voted in. But I decided against it. I was pretty apolitical at the time. So post-election, someone I know shared a Ben Swan video with me. I'm not sure if are either of you familiar with Ben Swan?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, not at the current moment, but enlighten me, dude.
You definitely look up his YouTube channel, Ben Swan, SWANN, and he's one of the most brilliant journalists out there right now, I think.
He does the truth in media and the reality check.
Yeah, reality check is fantastic. He's a good source for news on foreign policy, actually. He's like my second go-to after IntelWar.com. So yeah, I got into Ben Swan, and then that's really what it just cascaded from there. I got into Adam versus the Man, Adam Kokesh, Molyneux, and then just moved on to all kinds of other podcasts and just listened to hours and hours of podcasts. Yeah, and that's about it.
Word. Nice, dude. So my name is. Oh, sorry. Go for it.
Oh no, go ahead. And then.
Or, yeah. Word. My name is Idiot's Query. My real name is Daniel. If you want to call me Daniel, doesn't really matter what the fuck ever. The reason I'm into anarchism and anti-statism and all that good shit is because when I was in high school, back in early 2000s, I was in a really conservative area. Like me myself, I was, I guess, liberal at the time. Like I was all about gay rights. I was like, hey, who fucking cares? All this good shit, right? And so I just went with that. And I was like, all right, then. And everyone there was very religious and always shoving down their opinions down your throat. And like, if you weren't this, you were evil. And so I grew up around that before it became like a big, huge deal like it is now. Like pretty much being attacked for all my opinions. And I was like, well, this isn't very fucking nice. So I decided to start thinking a bit more about it. And I was always raised in the way that, people are independent. They are themselves, and let them do whatever the fuck they want to do as long as they don't hurt you and you don't hurt them. It's pretty, like John Locke said, laissez-faire, do whatever the fuck you want as long as you don't hurt other people. That's my kind of mantra. And so I started believing in that more and more. And then I slowly was like, nah, liberalism sucks, conservatism sucks, this sucks, that sucks. And then I realized they're all just doing the same old shit, just different ways. They're trying to manipulate me morally. And I'm like, nah, my morals are pretty set. Like, I've been called a Nazi a few times because, like, I believe nihilism pretty deeply. Nietzsche was my man there for a minute, and it's kind of saddening that a lot of people don't really understand what he's going for. And so I see those kinds of things, like a moral and philosophical perspective, and like, yeah, the state's not really too great of a place, or it's more like a religion, really, is how I see it. And so I was like, yeah, let's just jump on that and see what goes from there. And so far, it's been working out for me pretty well. And that's about all I can say about me, really. Is I'm the idiot that people love to hate, and I'll just spew bullshit. I will say the most fucked up shit just to piss you off. As long as it starts a discussion, if you call me an idiot, cool, go for it. I own it. So that's me, man.
Very cool. What about you, Mance?
I think we all know I'm an idiot. So
I
don't think they're there. But how did I become an anarchist? Why did I become an anarchist? I guess I was one all along, and it took hearing somebody explain, laissez-faire free markets and non-interventionist foreign policy in order for me to come over to that side. Read a couple books and jumped in from there.
Very cool. All right, well, so we've got a relatively like mixed basket, mostly just like anti-state. So I mean that part of it isn't very diverse, but diverse approaches to it. So it's good because what this show is going to be designed to do is give various commentaries on recent news. And I wasn't gonna cover this today, like I was just gonna jump out with Iran, but the net neutrality vote happened today, and net neutrality is back. So let's just start with what everybody thinks net neutrality is.
Okay, yeah. From what I understand, what net neutrality is, as far as I'm not really too big into it, and I started looking it up recently as it became a much bigger deal. And what I seem to realize is that it's what net neutrality seems to be is the government controlling what you can do. They're trying to open it up, like they're forcing it to be fair versus letting the market do it, which is kind of what I think is going on with it. If I'm completely wrong, by all means, let me know, and like I'll see what I can do about that logically wise. Oh, and as for the undiverse points of view, I'm a devil's advocate from hell. Like I'll even combat myself. Like it's that kind of crazy. So if we need a devil's advocate for logical purposes, not a problem.
Right.
But yeah, that's what I think. So I think net neutrality is it's trying to force it. Like most people want things to be forced.
Oh yeah, and I would say that you're like mostly you're dead on from the perspective of like somebody who's against it, but like for me, I would say that it doesn't even make it fair because the anti-competitive bullshit that caused net neutrality to even be on people's lips in the first place is still there. So I mean, there's that too. But what about everybody else?
To me, net neutrality is the same thing as Trump's tariffs. Okay, you see that there's a problem because you see that there's a problem that the free market hasn't created, cronyism has created, and the only way that the only way they know how to solve that problem is by increasing the size of the government. So they step in and they come up with some idea which is just going to cause certain companies to have a monopoly, which is what they say is not going to happen, but which is what is obviously going to happen. And they just don't trust. They don't trust the free market to work. So, I mean, my internet gets throttled every night by my internet provider from 6 to 7 o'clock. If I wanted to, I could go and get and deal with somebody who doesn't do that. Well, I don't. It's between 6 and 7 o'clock. It doesn't bother me as much, and I'm willing to put up with it until I'm not. So that's what they're worried about. They're worried about people are going to be throttled, all this bullshit. But it's just basically government creating a solution for a problem that they started in the first place. So.
Right.
Yeah, net neutrality, when people's reaction to that whole thing, to me, is funny. Just the fact that they trust the FCC. they ask the FCC to give themselves more power, and they trust it implicitly to regulate it well. The FCC, of all things. Like I just don't see that happening.
And this is like the same group of people that like laughs their ass off when South Park does that fucking FCC song. I think that was them. No, that was Family Guy. Whatever. It's hard to tell the difference these days.
I don't think I've heard that one.
It's a song where they go after the fact that you can say certain things and you can't say others, and the lines are really sort of blurry. That's the point they were making. So,
like pointing out the ridiculous things you can't get away with, and
yeah,
whereas you can't get away with other things.
Yeah, and like I messed up the title of it. I think it was the freaking FCC, because like you can't say fucking on TV even though they know what you fucking mean.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. It's sort of like Christians saying frick, from the contents of the heart the mouth speaks. So I mean, if people know what you mean, then saying the word is irrelevant.
Darn means the same thing as damn.
Yeah.
They're all it's the same thing.
But anyway,
like arbitrary differences,
So on that level, when you hear like everybody around you, because most people are still statist, advocating net neutrality, what is your first sort of response to them?
Why? Why?
Oh yeah, go ahead, man.
Yeah, exactly.
No. Why? What? Tell me the problem that it's going to solve, and tell me exactly how it's going to do that. And most of them have no fucking clue what net neutrality is, what it's going to solve, what it's going to do, and they end up just looking like idiots. And I'm sorry, I'm more along the lines of ridicule Some people just deserve ridicule, and I'm more than happy to give it to them.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah.
That's completely understandable because I just ask them why too all the time. Like, what do you want to do and why? Even like if I know exactly what someone's talking about, I still want to ask them, like, why do you want this? Because that way they can tell me exactly what they mean. And if they can't explain it well enough, I ask them enough questions to hopefully get that out of them and figure out why they're trying to do this or what purpose will it have for them to have this.
What about you, Zach?
Yeah, I just see hear so much hysteria, particularly when when it was first in the news that Ajit Pai was going to overturn net neutrality, and everyone was just freaking out. And the claims that I heard about what was going to happen was just straight up propaganda. There was a lot of obvious propaganda from various media outlets, and people just ate that shit up like wholesale.
Right, and
And
they don't
talking to
consider
people,
like why net sucks to begin with. Like oftentimes that's the real problem. Like they don't consider why it sucks to begin with, which is the fact that like the corporations and government work together to lock regions down so that no competition can get in, and then they can make whatever rules they want.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, and I try to I always try to play devil's advocate with myself, if only because most people I talk to are not they're not even as good as criticizing my point of view as I am. Like
It's called
they're
critical
just
thinking,
not.
bro.
Yeah, they're just not good at it. So I'm kind of left to myself to try to do that. And so when it comes to net neutrality, I try to like admit that things are left to the free market. It's not like you just can't trust people. Corporations are not above anything any more than government is. So of course they're going to do skeevy things. They're gonna do shady business practices. But the FCC is a monopoly too, and they're going to create monopolies. They're not above. If business practices, if businesses if they want a monopoly on an industry, you have a regulator like the FCC, they'll just buy the regulator. They can just pay them, and that happens.
Yeah, the lobbyists and the specific people who make deals with them, like people don't look beyond the curtain. They're not interested in backroom deals anymore. Only when Trump is involved, then everybody's all about anti-corruption.
Yeah, and and it's not always obvious. These days it's not like directly there's not like direct paper trails. Like you said, lobbying is just it's a lot more complicated these days. So I try not to I try to admit to if the FCC if we don't have net neutrality, things aren't just going to be perfect necessarily. So I try to be honest about that when talking with people, but at the same time, just some of the most ridiculous claims of what's going to happen without it were just over the top and unfounded. And so I like to the point that I likened them to conspiracy theorists. There's just like you sound like a conspiracy theorist. Like let me hear some evidence for any of this.
Well, I mean, they sound like a conspiracy hypothesis because a theorist actually has some testing behind it.
True.
Like I'm a proud conspiracy theorist, but only because I've actually looked into these things. But so let me hear from the other two. What are the most ridiculous claims you've heard in support of net neutrality?
I've heard every man. I've heard basically that you're going if you want to access CNN, that it'll get taken over by shady. It's going to be taken over by shady people, and that if you want to access CNN and quote unquote real news, you're going to have to pay $10 to $15 a month just to use the bandwidth to do that. But if you want to go to InfoWars will be free. So like the shady group is going to take over the internet that only wants you to think what's on InfoWars is true. And this person was dead serious. I mean, it sounds it sounds like Poe, but no, these were actual words coming out of an idiot's mouth.
Yeah, I've heard similar things because Ajit Pai, I forget what his connections were, but he's like loosely connected to Trump.
Yeah,
Verizon used to work for Verizon too.
Well, wasn't he appointed by Obama in the first place?
Something like that.
Yeah, he was head of the FCC under Obama at one point, I think, and then he left, and I think now he's back with Trump. So I don't know if I don't know if it seems to me the only religion he has is statism. He doesn't care which flavor it is.
Anybody else have anything to say on that?
Yeah, pretty much what I've heard about it for people wanting it is that it'll allow like free flow. Like you turn on the faucet and boom, that's what net neutrality does. It allows everything to go out. Versus without net neutrality, it's like putting a little stopper in there, like slowing the flow down. And I'm like, that doesn't make much sense. I'm pretty sure also with the nature of competition that other companies are going to see that customers aren't happy with their provider, and they're gonna be like, oh, well, it's a market we can tap into. We can make a business deal with these people. We're gonna have to cut them a certain deal or whatever they have to do to make the business work for both parties, and then they can undercut them and sell better. Like that's what I feel what could happen with net neutrality. It's pretty much allowing certain companies, like how Mance was saying, that he only has a certain IP provider there, right? And so what he has to deal with is that one person controls all of that. And with net neutrality, that's pretty much allowing only them to be there, from what I understand of it. I can be completely wrong here. That's what I understand about it so far. And so for me, it's like, well, why not get rid of net neutrality so we can have the competition to see what actually is better? Like with phone companies don't really bog you down too much. They will if you sign up for a certain contract, but you also got to read what you're signing up for, what you're buying. That's part of the business practices. So that's what I see with it so far. It's like it's just like a net neutrality is supposed to be the open faucet where without it, it's going to get cut off and everything like that when it's already getting cut off.
By the same corrupt corporations they claim would just be unfettered during like any other paradigm.
Yeah. It's kind of funny if you think about it.
Well, it's really emblematic of the fact that people don't pay the fuck attention. Because like if they did, they would know that this is already happening and that no scary thing is going to be any worse than it already is. So, and not to mention that, but putting your faith in government to control a utility at all is dumb, much less making the single most popular global communication network subject to government oversight any more than it already is. Seems really fucking dumb, especially since everybody's already hyper concerned whenever it seems like somebody's being censored. Well, how is it going to be when you think you can't do anything without the state? Everybody's going to be censored. Nobody's going to be exempt.
Yeah, exactly. And the state is the only one that can censor you, and that's the beauty of our Constitution. I do love the Constitution as it stands, but I am against the state. Like, it's kind of fucked up because, like, I know that we can't be without a state right now. I would love that. That'd be amazing, right? I think that would be fantastic. But as I am right now, I love the Constitution, the Bill of Rights anyway, and everything beyond that too. Or for the most part, there's some things I'm like, that doesn't make much sense. And actually, my YouTube channel that I'm working on is going to be discussing the Constitution and everything like that, and how it's interpreted with original intent versus living document, all that good noise. And the thing is that government is the only one that can censor people. And so if they think that government is the only thing that is keeping away censorship, they're completely illogical at that point. It's like, how does that make any sense? How can the government stop you from being censored when they're the only ones that can censor you? They can say that you cannot be censored by others or by us, but they're the only ones who can do that at the same time.
Well, and I think that largely comes from the idea that the state is benevolent, which, you know, if you look into it, the state is from cradle to grave convinced everybody that it touches that without the state there would be no benevolence. Without the state, old ladies would be dying in the street, homes would be burning down, there would be no running water, there'd be looting, you know, shit like that. And they've been telling us that essentially from preschool up, because when you have a system that tells people, you know, go to the police when you need help, go to the government when something is wrong with the country, when you have people blindly pledging allegiance to the flag, the idea of doing anything other than legislative action in response to something you know, approaching corruption seems alien to them.
Yeah,
well, yeah, just like oh, sorry.
Sorry. That's pretty much my first response to any argument for the state, is that the state does not have the ability to care about you in the first place, and then they also don't have the ability to know your needs and wants either. You know, I mean, just look at Dunbar's number. It's, you know, 300 something. That's literally the number of people that you can have in your mind that you think of as people. Beyond that, they're just statistics. So you can't, like, the state, it just doesn't have the ability to care about you and your family and people, and they just don't have your best interest at heart.
And even if they did, it'd be very hard to hold them accountable to that, because, you know, essentially it's a trust mechanism, and if you don't trust them implicitly, then the system falls apart, and if you do trust them implicitly, then they can fuck you over in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
go ahead, idiot.
Oh yeah, I was gonna concur with you actually, because at the same time, it's like you pretty much explained religion at that. Like, so you can't have this without government. You can't have this without government. Well, religious people also argue you wouldn't have life without, you know, religion. You wouldn't have life without our God or this or that or our gods, whatever. So it's at the same time, it's like, well, you're literally saying that this can't happen because a higher power or something I can't control is there,
Right.
and that's why it's here. And to me, that's complete bullshit. It's like, how? Like, can you explain this to me better so I can understand your position? But it never goes beyond that. It's just, well, it's here, so we have to have it, and it's the only reason we're here. I'm like, well, that still doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, have you read Larkin Rose's book, The Most Dangerous Superstition?
I haven't
No,
yet.
I haven't read that yet.
Well, you would like it. Both of you. I think Mance has. You've read that, right, Mance?
Yeah, that was a partial inspiration for my first book. So
yeah, Mance has written
a
couple books, by the way. If you want to plug those, you can.
Oh yeah, the first one was called "Freedom Through Memedom: 31-Day Guide to Waking Up to Liberty." That was the one that was inspired by Larkin's book, and I've been at least a couple people had told me they thought it was every bit as good or close. And that's remarkable to hear. I don't even know how to deal with that. And the one I just released is "The Kids Are Not All Right," which is basically just a takedown of cultural Marxism. So, yeah, I decided the second one on cultural Marxism was actually the first one I wanted to do, but I wanted people to realize that my goal is to destroy the state. You know, there's two problems I see. Well, there's more than two problems, but the state's always the first problem. Cultural Marxism problem is the problem that I deal with on a daily basis in the business I work in. So, yeah, that's a little personal to me.
I lost you right after the business I work in. Did
The
you
bit
finish at that point?
the business I work in, we are this whole cultural Marxism movement, this whole um, campus insanity has spilled out into a lot of boardrooms, even of very large companies. So I get to deal with it on a daily basis. So that's a personal issue for me. That's why I wrote the book. It's very personal.
Nice. I'll definitely be checking that out, dude.
Yeah, because and the reason I brought up the most dangerous superstition is because it goes into the idea, because you brought up the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, and he goes into it in some detail, the idea that essentially magic paper won't save anyone, and unless the government is accountable, the government won't be made any better by returning to it, because the smallest governments turn into the biggest tyrannies. And it's got a whole lot of interesting topics, and some of those topics involve essentially how people have a blind worship to the state, how the state is their god, and they have religious precepts as to how to properly worship the state so that the state will grant them things. And I think that's sort of endemic to the spread of the state. I think that people assuming that the state can be leashed is one of the core topics that needs to be dismantled, because until we dismantle the idea that the state can be leashed, I don't think that anybody's going to appreciate an argument that goes for unleashing everybody from the state when the state seems like the only thing standing between them and tyranny. So, as far as I'm concerned, I don't support like any sort of status documentation. I want people to start leading themselves based on their own precepts, and if they can't, I want genetics to deal with them and the fact that evolution happens to solve the problem.
Oh no, definitely. Like, I concur with you. The reason I love the documents and everything like that, all the status documents, is because they're so fun to just read and to fuck around with, because you can interpret them different ways and all that good stuff. Like, I'm probably part of the issue where I'm saying like, yeah, I love it, but I love to fuck with it. I just love to play with it. It's fun. Especially because like you can look at it this way too. Like you can look at it like, okay, you have this document, right? If we didn't have that document, would we be able to think about what we're thinking about right now? Like, would we be able to look at these documents and go, oh, well, we don't need a state? We would know the opposite of the state if we didn't have these documents to look for or look at and interpret and all that good noise, right? So we have these things like these ideas. Essentially, look at the documents as ideas. Like these ideas we can branch off of. We don't have to let these ideas rule us, per se, like religion rules other people in their Bible and stuff like that, So like we can look at it and be like, okay, this is an idea. We can branch off of this. Like be creative with it, like competition. See someone else doing something with it. Like, okay, I like that. My idea is going to do this, like philosophers have for eons. They always have these ideas that are always flowing. So, like, don't look at it as like the thing to follow, and you have to do that. Look at it as like, that's a good idea. I'm gonna roll with it. I'm gonna see what I can do with it myself, and see what works for me, instead of blindly following something. That's how I look at it anyway.
Yeah. Okay. On that level, then, how would you like approach sort of a freer internet without net neutrality?
How would I approach a freer internet? Well, I kind of like how. All right, so I would just. Well, that goes kind of like into a whole bunch of things. Let me see. Freer internet. Can you elaborate on what you mean by freer internet, so I don't make too big of a fool of myself?
Well, an internet with limited monopoly.
Oh, and it was limited monopoly. Oh, yeah, that can be. I want to say like accomplished, but I would say that allow anyone to bring up anything like the FCC. They have codes and everything like that, right? So you have to go through that. But if we didn't have the FCC, we didn't have any other kind of regulation. We just had technology going about it. We could regulate ourselves easily. There wouldn't. Well, of course, there'd be bitching all the time, but that's going to happen no matter what you do. So what we could do is just allow the internet to just have its own thing. It would literally be a place of diverse opinion and diverse ideas just spinning around and going about. where it wouldn't be this is where you have to go if you want this idea, or this is where you have to go if you want this idea, or these people are who you have to support for this idea. It can be, oh well, this person has this idea, I'm going to bounce off that and throw it around here and just mess up the pot just cause.
Right.
So I think that would possibly work. If we're going for like businesses and business wise, anybody at that point would be able to access it if they had. I don't know how exactly how internet companies work, so I'm not probably the best opinionated on that subject. But I think if anyone had access to set up their own IP and everything like that, it'd be easily done. I think anyway, possibly.
So you're talking about like mesh nets?
Mesh nets. I do not know what that is.
Oh, okay. Well, so a mesh net is several nodes all hooked up to the same general network that and those nodes have like servers that run those nodes, and those nodes connect directly to each other. So and it oftentimes runs on a wireless system. So you could have it's essentially more decentralized than the way the internet works now, where all the servers need to be able to serve information from every other server. And it's more like if you want to connect to the mesh, you'll get the information that the network is capable of giving you by the amount of nodes that are nearby.
Okay, so it's like on-demand information, right? Like you want it, you get it.
Well, if it's on the mesh net. So if we transition to that, it's sort of like the difference between the dollar and Bitcoin. You know how Bitcoin has the nodes and Bitcoin has the central servers solving the problems and moving the cryptocurrency from place to place, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be sort of like that, only with information.
Oh, okay. Then yeah, I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah, so because that's one of the things I think would be a very good way of approaching the future of the internet, and a get away from the DARPA net as well, which is also nice. You were gonna say something, Zachary?
I don't think so.
Okay, all right, gotcha.
I didn't have anything.
I saw your mic unmuted, so I figured you had something.
So
like on that level, how like the people that are here, let's just take this brief like 3-person survey. How many of you would hold a small server in your room and pay the electric cost for it if it meant free your internet?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't cost that much anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. That would be essential.
Oh yeah, definitely do.
See, and when I ask most people about this, they're normally okay with the concept, which means that they're okay with paying more for better internet. And the whole like everything's going to be throttled thing sort of immediately falls apart when you start talking about a much freer internet where you would be able to control your own information. And there's something called zero net as well, which is sort of like it's sort of like the internet 2.0, where you download the site in order to view it, so it can never be censored. The information can never be removed or controlled. And once it's out there, if people have synced your site on their computer, they can see it. Now, this isn't necessarily for everybody, because not everybody has like multiple terabytes in their hard drive that they could devote to something like this. But through a mesh network boosting certain sites like these, I think that it could be a very doable thing, and very quickly.
Almost definitely, because you have more people doing it. Like with anything, the more people you have doing it, the faster it can get done, and the easier it can get done. Because a lot more people are involved, and they want this to happen.
Right. And with the mesh net, the way it works, essentially, if one node goes down, there's still enough in the mesh network to keep the signal strong, especially if the mesh network is wireless. So, like, I guess where I'm going with that is that it's not impossible to have an unregulated internet that's self-sustaining.
Yeah, this is something like, and I'm not too well versed on mesh nets, but I feel like this is something that has to. We need an example, small scale, of these things working before they can spread throughout the world.
Right. Yeah, well, and I think that that's what needs to start, because I'm all about decentralization. I want to get people away from the existing paradigms that have sort of controlled them. So that's my bias there, and I think that part of the problem that runs through everything is the idea that when you have a centralized network, it's something you can trust to constantly deliver what you want from it.
Yeah. What do you think of the possibility that I'm thinking it might be more likely that we would see mesh nets pop up in foreign countries, particularly.
Oh yeah, that's where they're the most popular.
Yeah, say the Mideast, like in Egypt. There, some years ago, remember when the Egyptian government was censoring the internet when there were like riots going on there.
Right. Well, and they used mesh networks to sort of like subvert the existing, because they had it all on their phones. They were operating a mesh network with their phones.
Oh, they were actually doing that in Egypt.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing a story on it. Let me see if I can find that. Meshnet's protest censorship. That should be a good enough search. But yeah, they were doing it for that. What am I doing? Right.
Yeah, one of the things is I think just culturally, there's so many differences culturally between peoples, and particularly in America, people are just so comfortable and so dependent, and they're just comfortable to let other people do everything for them, and as long as everything's running smoothly enough, they just have no desire to shake things up or anything, or to uh, rock the boat or innovate in any way. Whereas in foreign countries, I mean, just look at where cryptocurrencies are popular. You know, like in Greece after their financial collapse, and various other countries where the governments were just messing with their currencies. I mean, not that the U.S. Meddles with the U.S. dollar plenty, but the thing is, it's stable. So, Americans are, just comfortable with that. As long as everything's running smooth enough, they just don't care.
Right. So okay, so I found the articles I was talking about. They weren't Egypt. Iran had people using Fire Chat and over mesh networks, and also the mesh networks specifically took root in Hong Kong. There's an article here on extremetech.com. Hong Kong protesters, this was 2014, turned to mesh networks to evade China's censorship. It's by Sebastian Anthony on September 30th, 2014 at 8:29 a.m. If y'all want to look that up, it's on extremetech.com. The rather cramped streets of Hong Kong are currently lined with tens of thousands of people. The Umbrella Revolution. They are mostly students and members of Occupy Central who are protesting for a fully democratic election process during the Hong Kong 2017 leadership election. The Chinese government, as always, has blocked and censored a number of social media sites so that mainland China can't see what's going on in Hong Kong. If the protest continues, the authorities might turn to more drastic measures, such as cutting Hong Kong's internet connection or turning off the cellular networks. The Hong Kong protesters won't be so easily thwarted, however. They are already using a mesh networking app called Fire Chat, which allows the protesters to communicate freely without any kind of centralized cellular or Wi-Fi network. Clearly, the Umbrella Revolution is in it for the long haul. So if you know, that's like over 3 years ago, like 3.5, 4 years ago. And it happened because people decided that they weren't going to be censored. So I would say that, yeah, that's a pretty good start.
It definitely sounds like one, man.
And then, like, over here, social media beats censorship in Iran. This is on Reason.com in April 2018, so this year. Matthew Petty from the April 2018 issue. This is from the actual magazine that came out, because, like, they wanted to push this story harder. So Reason.com, if all y'all want to check that out. In the first days of January, a meme spread through Iran. The image featured telecommunications minister Mohammad Jaroumi drop-kicking the logos of Tor and the logos, of Tor, an encrypted proxy network, and several social media platforms, a reference to the Iranian government's ban of the messaging service Telegram in response to protests in late December. On January 4th, the meme ended up on the front page of Ganoon, a newspaper aligned with the country's liberal reformist movement. The same day, Jaroumi reposted it on his Instagram account, along with the caption, "The National Security Council, which the telecommunications ministry is not part of, has decided, along with other security measures, to impose temporary restrictions on cyberspace in order to establish peace. Instead of addressing the roots of the protests and unrest, some are trying to blame cyberspace." So it goes on to say, like, discuss the protests that are happening. And the protests that are happening are partially involving like these sort of pushback against this sort of censorship. So I would hope that Iran starts to look into this as well, starts to look into the same sorts of things that that Hong Kong did, to try and get back on board with sort of their own media, to reappropriate it, to seize their own technology. Because, like, I think that's part of the problem. People turn to government, and then they have no recourse when government turns against them.
I can definitely see that. Yeah, that's most likely the problem. If you can't really, express yourself, you're essentially making sure that yourself is locked up. If you don't do anything against it, if you don't try to speak out, I guess, is what it pretty much boils down to, right? You don't want to be censored. You got to figure out a way not to be censored.
Right. And that's like, censorship is a huge issue, because the government gets to control the platforms. But if the government isn't allowed to control the platforms, then censorship becomes much less of an issue, and revolutions can actually take place, which is an interesting concept, especially if you control your own mesh and make sure that it's encrypted and that people without the password can't get in. That's a real way to block out the state.
True,
Sort of,
that is.
you can't. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm like, I agree with you. That is a great way to keep out the state as well. And like the cool thing is about that is that because you're allowed to, it pretty much allows you for one specific group to do that, but it doesn't restrict it to just that. Because as we see with the dark web and everything like that, you can do a whole bunch of shit where government can't get at you, and you can still discuss ideas with everyone. So the only problem I could see with that happening is, well, hey, you're censoring me. I can't speak on your platform. It's like, well, what would you like to say? We can let you in. Like, whatever you want to do. Like, you just have to communicate, right? And with your own mesh networks, from what I'm hearing from you and what I'm understanding so far, is that you're allowed to have it, and you're allowed to let in who you want, who you don't want. Kind of like with Twitter or Facebook and all the other, YouTube even, you can block people on your own. You don't have to ask YouTube or Facebook or Twitter to block them for you. You don't have to say, oh, these guys are doing hate speech. You can do it yourself. But the thing is, they're going down to these social media platforms and having them stop it for them.
Well, and of course, like, on that level, what was I going to say? The algorithm's doing a good enough job of censorship. So, I mean, the platforms that are controlled on a central level, I think, have their own problems. That's why I would advocate everybody who has something valuable to say join Steemit. Y'all familiar with Steemit?
Negative.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I gotta get on there. I don't think I created
Okay.
a cow yet, but
Okay, well, for those who aren't familiar with it, it's a blockchain-based information sharing site that rewards people for sharing information and for contributing to that sharing in cryptocurrency. And it's an open source project, so anybody can latch onto their blockchain and, you know, sort of make a different service that can use the blockchain to benefit to benefit members that use it. So like there's DLive, which is a live streaming app, and I will be putting this on DLive in the future. I just can't figure out my Nginx server yet, but you know, that's a separate story. Yeah, I'll be getting some help with that. But either way, um, how it works is that as long as your app pushes things onto the blockchain, you can use the blockchain and you can benefit from the cryptocurrency garnered from the blockchain. Like witnesses run the servers that make sure that everything runs smoothly, and everything's added to a rewards pool where people pull from that. And given the fact that it's not only a decentralized experience where anybody can download that blockchain and get copies of everybody's posts to make sure that nothing is censored, but it's also a rewarding way to do it. I'm not, like, by the way, sponsored by Steemit or whatever. I am, however, sponsored by Brave Browser, CryptoTab, and Liberty Mugs if y'all want to check the description. But there's there are many ways to sort of decentralize media, and I think that's really the future.
yeah, I agree. Decentralized media these days. I mean, earlier, you know, Idiot's Query was saying that only governments can censor, and as far they're the only ones that can really violate your rights of free speech. But you know, Twitter, Facebook these days, there's plenty of censorship going on, and there's plenty of bias. So the only way to get around that is to create and join alternatives to.
Yeah, exactly. Because they have that they're on their own business, right? And so if you believe your own businesses, you have to allow their businesses to do what they please. Like you have a right to serve who you want. You have or a right not to serve whoever you want. It's that kind of thing. Same with social media. Like they are their own platforms. They are the biggest speaking platforms, which is why it sucks so much when you get censored on those platforms. Because they want you to censor it, or you said something off the wall that's kind of misogynistic or hateful or whatever, and I say that with air quotes. You guys can't see that right now, but I'm talking mad shit about it. So like when the private companies censor you, they're fully in their rights to do so, right? So you do have to go and find separate entities or separate companies to go speak on those platforms to get your voice out. So I completely agree with you, Zach.
Yeah, exactly. You know, they have freedom of association as much as we do, and they can allow or disallow whoever they want on their platforms. So
Yeah, haven't
it's
you
up to
been
us.
shadow banned a few times, Mance?
As far as I know, no. As far as I know, I've never gotten an infraction on Twitter or anything, which is friggin' shocking, man. Because I mean, I've gotten vacations from Facebook, but I don't think they've ever done anything to me on Twitter, which is just fucking. I don't know how, because you know how I get sometimes. I mean,
Yeah.
I just don't give a fuck. But yeah, I mean, I've never, as far as I know, I mean, I post shit all day, and I've never. People are always engaging. People are always engaging with my posts. So shit, as far as I know, I don't know how. I just don't know how they haven't hit me up yet, because it's got to be coming. We probably just talked it up right now, and it'll probably happen like.
Yeah, knock on some wood right now, man.
Yeah. Hey, but guys, I got to get going. It was great talking to all of y'all, and I'll talk to you later, Jeremiah.
All right, be well,
too,
man.
All right,
Good
take
talking.
care, guys.
We'll see you.
Bye.
But yeah, y'all can check out his books, Meme Freedom Through Memedom and The Kids Aren't All Right. And yeah, so let's get on to the next subject then, because we were talking a little bit about Iran. Y'all heard about the Iran deal, right? That's been blasted all over news for a long time.
I haven't really paid
Yeah.
attention to it much, so if you could explain it to me, I can probably give you my critical thought on it right now. Not necessarily like this is exactly what we should do about it, but if you explain it to me well enough, I might be able to come up with an idea for what we can do about it or why it's so crazy.
What about you, Zach?
Yeah, I heard a bit about it. I'm not too familiar with all the details of exactly what it was, but I just know it involves Iran not pursuing their nuclear program.
Yeah, that's pretty
Right.
much what I know too.
Well, okay, let's start with this. Do y'all think Iran should be able to have nukes? And on that level, do y'all think America should be allowed nukes either?
I think if
Yeah,
you,
go
sorry,
ahead.
go for it, Zach.
No, all you. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I would say that allow if a country really wants nukes, let them have nukes. Now it depends on what they want to use with the like what they want to do with those nukes. If they want it for defense, cool, let them have them, because everyone else does. Now if they want it for nefarious reasons, like if they purposely want to attack somebody for this, I can see why it's not good to let them have them. But because the technology exists, why should we regulate that technology on others? Like I understand how it's like match casualties. Like the NAP, right? Nukes are against the NAP because you can't control who exactly it hurts, right? And it's totally understandable. I get that. But at the same time, like because the technology is out, we can't really regulate that. Someone's going to come up with it again. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do anything about it because we can't do that. But at the same time, it's like, okay, if they want it, let them use it. Now, it's really hard to use a nuke for defense. I completely understand that. But in political science and strategy, even, you have the powers, right? You got to match the power in order to, stay neutral. It's pretty much mad, like between us and Russia, right? Mutually assured destruction. We know if we launch one off, they're going to launch one off, end of the world. So that kind of thing. It's like let them have them if they really want them. It depends on what they use them for. Now, if they do use them in a nefarious way, non-provoked, and just nuke somebody, yeah, we'll turn them into a glass parking lot too. Whatever. But at the same time, I get the fear for sure. Death is not fun for everybody.
What about you, Zach?
Yeah, just the idea that any country or countries should have a monopoly on nukes is just ridiculous to me.
I concur.
You look at which countries have the most nuclear stockpiles. It's United States by a landslide, and then Russia, and Israel's up there somewhere, and Iran has not a single one, not a single nuke. Why are they not? So why are Iran not allowed a single nuke? I mean, it's not. I don't want Iran to have nukes. I don't want anyone to have nukes. But as long as when you're talking about who should or shouldn't be allowed to have them, why Iran? Especially when there is only one country in all of history that has ever used nuclear weapons offensively. And that same country has also done way more nuclear tests than any other country, has a much larger nuclear stockpile than any other country, and killed, upwards of 300,000 people, most of them innocent. Innocent people. The United States is the only country that has ever killed innocent people with nuclear weapons.
Right. I mean, they don't exactly speak from a position of innocence themselves.
Not at all.
And neither do their allies, who basically suck their cock during all international meetings, to put it very gently. So, on that level, the Iran deal, let me read some BBC provided facts. So this is Iran nuclear deal. Key details from 2018, the 8th of May. So that's like what, a week ago. says in 2015, Iran agreed to a long-term deal on its nuclear program with the P5+1 group of world powers: the US, UK, France, China, Russia, and Germany. It came after years of tension over Iran's alleged efforts to develop a nuclear weapon. Iran insisted that its nuclear program was entirely peaceful, but the international community did not believe that. Under the accord, Iran agreed to limit its sensitive nuclear activities and allow in international inspectors in return for the lifting of crippling economic sanctions. Here are the commitments set out in the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Basically, they had to enrich not enough uranium to actually make a warhead. They had to allow in inspectors to regularly make sure they were doing that. You can read more about this sort of thing on that article that I mentioned. It's called Iran Nuclear Deal Key Details. But it also has like a plutonium pathway. Iran had been building a heavy water nuclear facility near the town of Iraq. Spent fuel from a heavy water reactor contains plutonium suitable for a nuclear bomb. World powers that originally wanted Iraq dismantled because of the proliferation risk. Under an interim nuclear deal agreed in 2013, Iran agreed not to commission or fuel the reactor. So they shut it down, basically. It would redesign the reactors so it could not produce any weapons-grade plutonium, and that all spent fuel would be sent out of the country as long as the modified reactor exists. And so basically, the whole thing is designed to ensure that Iran can't do anything with regards to weaponized nuclear materials. So it's hold on, just got a message. It's basically that, and Trump pulled out of that, saying that the fact that the U.S. was in it was bad for the U.S. Now, I've yet to see anything that was truly bad for the U.S. in this deal, but maybe I'm just not looking into it enough. What about either of you?
Well, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's pretty much saying, or Trump is saying that we're pulling out of it to allow Iran to have their own nukes. Is that what he's trying to do, or?
Well, no, I mean, he still apparently doesn't want them to have them, but I guess it was bad for the U.S. somehow. I'm gonna look up some things on why he thinks we shouldn't be in it, but he pulled out of it. I guess a good question would be, do either of you think that there are any times when it would be acceptable to use a nuke?
Acceptable? Let me see. The only time that they were used was not. I don't even think that was really too acceptable, to be honest. But at the same time, I think that we probably should have nuked. If we were going to nuke anybody, we probably should have nuked the Nazis versus Japan. You know, like we fucked up them so bad. And the thing was, is like, I don't necessarily think it's like we should just willy-nilly nuke anyone, because like at the end of the day, any action you do is technically justifiable, right? And it's like depending on who you are, it's the moral kind of gray area that's always been thrown around. Anything you do can be justifiable. So like, what is your justification for it? And like some people can say, oh, there's never justification to use it. It's like, well, they did, and do you agree with that? Like that's the thing. That's where I have to come from. I can't look at something and go, yeah, it's totally justifiable to use it. It's did they use it and why? I can't like, oh, we have to use it. It's are you going to or are you not? Really is what it boils down to for me.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with Curry there. I mean, I don't come at things usually from a morality standpoint. Usually, I'm a bit more of an egoist in that way. So as far as justification, it's like, you know, you can make up whatever justification you want for it. But as far as my personal values go, there's really never a justification that sits well with me as for using a nuke. Honestly, even in response to another nuclear attack, killing more innocent people just because you know, a bunch of innocent people were killed, you know, that's just more death and destruction to me that I don't want. So just yeah, it doesn't really sit well with me under any circumstances.
So, okay, on that level, this is from the New York Times. It says Trump abandons Iran nuclear deal he long scorned, and their article reads like this. And this is like halfway in. The president, however, framed his decision as the fulfillment of a bedrock campaign promise and as the act of a deal maker dissolving a fatally flawed agreement. He predicted his tough line with Iran would strengthen his hand as he prepared to meet North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un to begin negotiating the surrender of his nuclear arsenal. This was a horrible one-sided deal that should never ever have been made, a grim-faced Mr. Trump said in an 11-minute address from the diplomatic reception room of the White House. It didn't bring calm, it didn't bring peace, and it never will. Mr. Trump's announcement drew a chorus of opposition from European leaders, several of whom lobbied him feverishly not to pull out of the agreement and searched for fixes in it that would satisfy him. It also drew a rare public rebuke by Mr. Obama, who said that Trump's withdrawal would leave the world less safe, confronting it with the losing choice between a nuclear-armed Iran or another war in the Middle East. The response from Iran itself, however, was muted. President Hassan Rouhani declared that the Iranians intended to abide by the terms of the deal, and he criticized Mr. Trump for his history of not honoring international treaties. Mr. Trump won strong backing from Saudi Arabia and Israel, whose leader, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, hailed him for a historic move and courageous leadership. So what it really seems like is posturing for Israel and against Iran. And it seems like it's what it's really doing to sort of be what Real News Wednesday is supposed to be, not just reading from the New York Times. It seems like it's supposed to be a precursor for war. It seems like this is what they're going to use as justification. Like Iran makes some move and then suddenly they need some freedom. At least that's what I see.
Okay, yeah. So it looks like just because Trump pulled out, everyone's like, "Oh my God!" Now Iran's gonna turn into Satan and nuke everybody. Is pretty much what they're afraid of because we pulled out, saying, "Oh, we don't want to deal with them. We don't want to regulate them. Whatever, we're out of it." And everyone's like, "Oh, you're out of it," and now they're gonna blow up everyone.
Right.
That actually doesn't make any sense. So yeah, okay.
Right. And like add to that the fact that essentially the deal didn't deal with anything. The only thing it did was get Iran to agree to not produce nuclear materials in bulk, which can't by any means be specifically monitored. There are secret nuclear facilities all over the globe. They're just not controlled by Iran, probably. But it also can't be ensured that they wouldn't get it from another party who just decided that they were done with U.S. foreign policy. So this whole thing seems like largely ineffectual, and it seems like the only kind of thing that you could do with this sort of legislation anyway, the sort of treaty anyway, would be to like sort of posture that you're going to be the nation that holds that holds Iran accountable, so that Israel won't lose treaties with you. That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, that's kind of silly. Like, so everyone talks about countries having sovereignty. Do you guys remember when Russia took back over Crimea, right?
Right.
Remember
Yeah.
when that happened? Yeah, that was some crazy shit, right? And so everyone was like, "Oh, it's the sovereignty of the nation," and everything like this, and they're like, well, yeah, like, so you're talking about sovereignty of a nation, you're talking about Ukraine too, and all that good noise, right? One country went over another one, and that's kind of grounds for war. But at the same time, it's like, okay, so you want us to regulate another country, but you also want that country to recognize their sovereignty. Now, if they don't have their own sovereignty, how can they, actually build what they want to do? Or shit, that's the right way. But if they don't have their own responsibility or their own availability as a country to do the things they do, they can't be held accountable anyway. Like if you're regulating them, they can't be held accountable because you were the one doing it in the first place. So it's like, oh, if we pull out, you're not going to be able to hold us accountable for what they do, is what it seems like is happening. So we're pulling out of the deal because we don't want to be held accountable for what they're doing. And why should we be held accountable? Is that kind of what's going on here, or is that completely wrong?
Seems similar to like it either seems like that's what's happening, or it seems like they're just doing this as a precursor for the war that they've agreed in the back rooms to start anyway. Like,
Okay, gotcha.
because to me, I see a lot of this stuff as what we get to see. I see this stuff as the surface shit, but I've watched these people too many times agree to start wars in back rooms so that they can enrich themselves. And like the fucking Gulf of Tonkin, the Lusitania, like all of these things were either explicitly or implicitly allowed to happen, and then suddenly wars happen, and those wars are profitable to the state. And we're not supposed to think that that's somehow intentional. Why would I remotely believe these motherfuckers when they've been the ones spilling blood unnecessarily for the longest time? I mean, Trump says keep troops out of Syria when he's campaigning, and then bombs Syria when he's president. We're supposed to trust these people? Like, Obama said we should leave the Middle East and then tried to stay in fucking Iraq. He tried to extend the SOFA, and the Iraqi government, at least publicly, this is again the surface level stuff, Iraq said, no, and also we're going to try your soldiers for war crimes if you try to stick around. So, I mean, realistically, I think that this is all surface level bullshit trying to distract the people. That's the only way I can really rationalize these sorts of things in my mind.
What do you guys think of the possibility that they're pushing for war with Iran now because they couldn't quite get their war with Syria kickstarted?
Very likely. I mean, people start questioning that official narrative, maybe distract people with a massive move away from a deal. Maybe having enough in the proverbial magazine that you have enough shots that you can just keep on firing and people will always have a new location to run to. Because that's like, Trump has enough controversial things he said while he was campaigning that he could just act on all of them, with enough time between them, and nobody would ever look at anything else because they're just so outrageous. So it could very well be something like that.
Yeah, I could see that too. So your question was again that it's pretty much like the back curtains, right? Like they're going over here, like, oh, look at this, we're trying to start over here. Oh, that didn't work. We're gonna go over here now with moving the capital. Is pretty much, is that what you're getting at?
It's what it seems like to me. I'm not nothing's confirmed there, but it's what it seems like to me, because Iran is sticking with the nuclear deal. They say that they're still not going to enrich and produce all this shit, and they're still going to do it because they still want peace. Blah blah blah. But if that's the case, if Iran really won't, then the only thing the U.S. leaving does is it keeps eyes on those actions there. And why would there be so many controversies in a presidency, but to keep people moving their eyes? That's the way I see it.
Okay, yeah, and I can see how you see that now, because like it would if Iran's still not gonna nuke or do anything with it, if they still want peace, then why is it such a big deal that Trump pulled out in the first place? Like that makes no sense. It's like, if they're still gonna do it, why are you complaining about it? If they're still not gonna do the evils, why do you think they're going to suddenly do the evils if Trump pulls out? That makes no sense.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they're afraid that Trump is going to start sanctioning them and that that'll give Iran hostilities and that they'll enrich nuclear materials and fire away. But if they would, then they would have anyway, So I don't see that as a problem. At least not as far as I can tell.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it'd be a problem. Unless, well, okay, you know how everyone and their mother hates on Trump, right? Like, I don't like the guy either, but I'm not sitting there like making every waking second of my day just hating him. I don't think he's like that evil of a person. But you know, whatever. It's government. Government sucks. But if you're looking at Trump so hardcore and you actually think he's that evil, and he pulls out from wouldn't you want him to pull out from an Iran deal?
Right.
Just because, like, if he's part of the Iran deal, and you're afraid that he's so fucking evil that he's going to cause so much pain, why would you want him there in the first place? Because he can corrupt them if you think he's that evil. He can corrupt them like, oh no, we're going to change the deal. We're going to change the deal to do this and like undercut it. You know, he's a businessman, so he knows how contracts work, man. The contracts are fucking fun, and so he knows how to work them for sure. I'm pretty sure he could work out a way to make it to where Iran could just nuke everybody and it'd be fine. If he's really that evil, why is it so bad that he's pulling out? And if they're not doing it, what's the big deal?
Yeah, well, and since a ton of business goes on in the background, since a ton of business goes on where we can't see it, then maybe Trump would just have it structured with these other people so that they would look really, really angry at each other to justify the start of a war. I mean, why not? Trump's got a bunch of corporate allies that could really use some extra cash from a war. You know, at least as far as they're concerned, and war is the health of the state. So, like Buckley, I think, said that. So I don't see a point to this sort of thing, especially as widely broadcasted as it was, except sort of a precursor for something, whether that something be additional. Because I've seen this image, and it's a relatively good one, where it has a bunch of American flags surrounding Iran, representing U.S. bases, and it's ironic. It says, you know, of course Iran wants war. Why else would they have put their country so close to so many of our bases? And when you start to think of it in that way, when you start to think that maybe the U.S. is an interventionist foreign policy and it's looking for a precursor to intervention, it becomes real obvious that there are a lot of things that they could do with that are rather nefarious.
Definitely, I can definitely see that for sure. Yeah, because if you're looking for a fight, you're gonna have one, right? And that was a meme, right? Of course, the why'd you put your country so close to our bases, right? Or was that like a legit kind of criticism?
Oh, it was. Well, I mean, it was a fake meme. I've read The Selfish Gene, so I know that it's like those things aren't really memes, even though they operate on the same level as memes.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, so like I get that too, but like at that point, you're kind of like looking for a fight. You're like, well, why'd you do this? We're here, and thinking about all this, like what you're saying is, Team America World Police has never been such a true fucking title, right? If you think about it, because we're always saying like, oh, you can't do that, but we totally can, and the reason is because we're all good and we are unsure of your intentions, so we're going to try to regulate you.
Right, like Dennis Leary, like, we've got the bombs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I mean,
freedom isn't free, Query.
Sorry, what?
It costs a hefty fucking fee.
Yeah, well, it costs the common person a hefty fee, but like the elites run off of a debt structure. They can quantitatively ease themselves into retirement. So, like, they don't need to worry about the common man's economic struggle. They just need to like print more money, print more currency, and use taxes to pay back the interest on the loans used to do that, so that they can force their policies no matter what the price tag, because future generations and the ones currently paying for things with taxes are going to pay for it. Even though it devalues their savings, even though it effectively enslaves them, the common man is the only one stuck with the bill. The elites will never be stuck with the bill because they've got so many cushy ways to offset costs. You know, chief among them being the debt currency system, the fact that everybody's hooked into this number system when they're born. So it's all pretty fucked, but the elites will never pay that hefty price.
Yeah, not only do they pay, they profit off of them. You know,
right?
I try to tell everyone I know to read Smedley Butler's War is a Racket. I mean, even back then, early, he was a major general at the turn of the 20th century. And even then, he goes into detail about just how corrupt the military-industrial complex was at that time, and that was back then. That was close to 100 years ago. Yeah, it's all the military-industrial complex, and they're trying to keep every war we've already got going on, and they'll try to start every war they can.
Well, right, and they'll also, of course, they'll find ways to justify it, because that's the primary thing. It's always a culture war. That's the reason people think they need a government to not pay $40,000 every time they post a Facebook post. It's all a propaganda effort, get people to believe that they need the government. Like V for Vendetta was relatively dead on when they had that guy screaming about, like, let's remind them why they need us. Well, they don't, and that's why you need to remind them so constantly.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I concur with that.
Yeah, the propaganda is powerful.
So on that level, how would either of you convince people to not be afraid of Iran?
You're 7,000 miles away. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, look, when his, I don't know. I honestly don't know how to convince other people of that. But I just don't feel threatened by Iran whatsoever.
Well, what I ask people typically is, do you trust the U.S. government to give you accurate information on what they're doing, or do you think they keep a lot of the good shit secret? And generally, people will say that they think a lot of the good shit is kept secret, and the people who don't are, what we colloquially refer to as dumb fucks. So the like. If they keep a lot of the good shit secret, if they keep a lot of the good shit under wraps, the stuff that actually happens is very unknown to us. And they're going to constantly push forward their agenda under precepts that are like very appealing to the common person, like, keeping your friends and family safe and blah blah. Like that one fucking commercial. What was it? It was a very heavy-handed way to do a commercial, but it had this family, just like the dad got home from work or whatever, and they were all starting to sit down for dinner, and then literally just an explosion happens, and they say it only takes one. And they're trying to imply that giving powers any control over nukes is a bad idea. But they also imply by what their campaign is trying to say that the U.S. government is innocent of that sort of thing. When I think one or both of you mentioned earlier, they're the only ones to have ever done it.
Yeah, that was Zach.
So I mean, realistically, we're dealing with a group of people that are trying to normalize hypocrisy, to normalize these double standards, where like we're the only ones who should be able to have them, even though we're the only ones who have ever used them. And if you're afraid of Iran using them, then you should be even more afraid of the U.S. government using them, because the U.S. government has not only used them before, but has a bunch of precepts that they abide by. That mean that they want to wipe the population, that they want to get back to a lower number. So, I mean, there's plenty of reason to believe that the U.S. government is much more terrifying than Iran, and that means that the entire world is fucking scary, and Iran is a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, definitely. Because like I get your point in like 100%. If we are we are the only country that's ever used them, and we do have the most amount. So at that point in time, it's like, we are only allowed to have this because we are supposedly the only good actors in the world. Is what we're getting at pretty much. Is we are the only ones allowed to have this kind of power because we are the only good ones to have this power, and that's kind of bullshit if you think about it. If you can have it, why can't anyone else really? Like it work. Not only does it work on an individual level, it can work on a global scale as well.
Right. Well, let me just read something because I've read this multiple times on my other shit, but I don't think I've certainly never read it on this show because it's fucking new. But I've read it on multiple versions of multiple episodes of Moment of Rage, which is my radio show people can find. And apparently, if you want to find me, you can just Google Jeremiah Harding. So there's that too. Like I looked that up in like several private windows and some over VPNs, so that's fucking interesting on its own. But the Georgia Guidestones, it's a conspiracy that's very out in the open. They let us see this. It's in a public park. Well, I mean, it's behind gate fences, but it's out in the open, and the inscriptions read this way: maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Unite humanity with a living new language. Rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Balance personal rights with social duties. Prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. And it repeats this, by the way. Leave room for nature. So, there are 7 billion people on this planet. There are 14 times the amount of people that the elites want. And for anybody who doesn't believe that the Georgia Guidestones are affiliated with the elites, try to find out who actually commissioned them and who actually put them up, because it's fucking hard, and it leads to this guy with ostensibly a fake name. So let's be completely real here. The elites want to reduce the population. They're okay with reducing the population to 500 million, and they're going to find a way to do it. Well, how better to do that than by putting us in a state of perpetual war and then occasionally pulling the trigger and getting yet more bloody international conflict, all while they build like bunkers under Denver International Airport and shit like that. You know, you want to get conspiracy theory, there's your conspiracy theory. They've got enough room and resources to hide under the ground while they fuck up the above ground, and all of the plebs and, you know, like underclass fucking die. And so all of these people who claim that these wars must be for benevolent reasons, and that Iran is just so terrifying, fucking look into it, yo.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why is? Oh, sorry. Go for it.
Sorry. That's why I've started prepping. Actually, I literally just today started prepping, and I'm making a bug out bag just for that reason. However, you know, you can only prep so much for nuclear war. You know, if your city gets nuked, you're just SOL.
Right. Well, and that's if they use nukes. Have you heard about them, like, historically releasing biological contaminants over the over the major cities with fog, like San Francisco?
I have not. No.
Yeah, you can look that up. That's like well documented history. It's just it happened so far ago that people don't look at it anymore. That's what they really like. That's a verifiable pattern. They'll do some really corrupt, fucked up bullshit, and then when people stop paying attention to it, they'll reveal that they did it, like the MK Ultra, like the letters that said basically get on the Lusitania, it doesn't matter, when it was full of weapons. Like like the things where they said stay in the World Trade Center and a bunch of people were suddenly absent from work that day. I wonder why, all while the Pentagon and World Trade Center 7 contained some of the most sensitive documents related to a bunch of currency that went missing. Wonder why. Shit, shucks, we lost all the documents that prove we were basically money laundering. So, I mean, there are a whole lot of things that they do, and then somehow later on it comes out as factual, not just some like crazy guy with a tinfoil hat. Which, by the way, Faraday cages are so much better for anybody out there looking to protect their skull from those elf weapons. But either way, the point is that they'll do these things. They'll start these petty little things, and they'll kill enough people to make a significant dent. And so they'll do this sort of thing, and then it'll come out later that it was pre-planned. And it's happened so many fucking times that even if there was some sort of document proving that it wasn't pre-planned somehow, I would probably still believe that any sort of conflict with Iran was entirely manufactured.
Good. That does make sense to a certain extent, for sure. Like, I don't think that one side in this is better than the other. I mean, they both have they're both probably wrong. Or they both are wrong, obviously. But at the same time, is you can't just look at one state and be like, "Oh, it's your fault," or "It's your fault." You know, like the old saying goes, "It takes two to tango," right? And so, like, if one country said enough to piss off another, to where like they had a deal or something, another pulls out, you know, that's upon them. That's both of their faults. You know, it happened for that reason or whatever reason they give. And so, like, to piss other people off, to purposely cause a war, you know, I get that. You know, war games suck ass for sure. But you know, I don't think that, you know, war is a good thing, nor do I think that we should just start them for no reason. Like, if it all boils down to money, which it most likely does, especially for corporations and things like that. I mean, we can't get away from war either way. Like, even if in religion, you know, if you look at the Middle East, they're constantly at war with each other over like the state, or like the religious capital and things like that. They're constantly in war. So like religion has brought war to really high, and then we kind of tried to get rid of religion a little bit. We kind of sectioned off of it. When we created the U.S., we tried to separate church and state, but at the same time, state itself is just like a religion. So you're always going to have war if you have a state. You're always going to have war if you have religion. And so it's kind of fucked up at the same time. Like, you're also going to have like little squabbles if you don't have states either. You know, that's always going to happen. People are assholes in general, to put it lightly, you know? So
Right.
that's how I see it. Like, it's all complete smoke and mirrors for sure, dude. I'm pretty sure something's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not prepping for it because, like, I'm like, sweet, turn me into, you know, an ash paste on the wall. I'm cool with it. However, don't fuck up other people. There's no reason to do that. There's no reason to nuke the whole world just because you guys are pissed off at each other.
Well, and they wouldn't though. That's the thing. They wouldn't do it because they were pissed off, and if they did, they would do it. Okay, so they wouldn't do it because they were pissed off with each other. They would do it because they were pissed off at the common man for having risen up, and they've got enough places that they can go that they can avoid any sort of consequence of that sort of action. So there is that part of it too.
Okay, yeah, I can see that side too. Yeah, definitely.
Because, like, I mean, have you ever looked into the Denver International Airport?
Yeah, dude. I used to live in Colorado Springs, actually, and visited Denver Airport once before. And I saw this one documentary. I can't remember the exact documentary. It might have been Zeitgeist. I don't know, but I'm not really a conspiracy theorist too much. But I do see that they have like a fuckload of underground bunkers, and like you can't reach that shit for anything to save your life, man. And so, like, especially with NORAD in Colorado Springs, even like you have Cheyenne Mountain, right? That's pretty much the base of NORAD, and so that's where all the shit goes down. And in NORAD, they have it's its own bunker. It's nuke proof, kinda, to a certain extent, you know. They have like 7 years or some shit. They have their own lake inside it, and like a whole bunch of shit. Like, they're prepared for shit to go down. Like, it's almost like they're wanting it to go down, but at the same time, I understand like being prepared. Like Zach said, he's building a rucksack. You know, he's getting prepared for the worst shit to happen because he sees it kind of happening. But before that happened, why build such a huge thing? It's like you're always going to be prepared for a war because of your state. You're going to want war.
Well, to me, that just seems like the final hammer. To me, I think that the state has ramped up their weapons and all this as a final insurance policy against losing their power, because they will have ultimate power if they destroy the overworld, proverbially speaking, while they escape to the underworld. I mean, realistically, that's a very workable strategy, and it's certainly something that the murals in the Denver International Airport, the airport with a literal pale horse above it, seem to depict, is death and rebirth, is like peace after death and rebirth, and like the new civilization dawning and people, springing out of it. To me, they have all of the necessary things, not to just get too conspiracy and sci-fi, because this is supposed to be a news show, but whatever, it's going to get tangential, especially since I let this happen like every time I do one of these things. Which, by the way, anybody who's interested in this sort of thing, check out Shit Shooting Sunday. It happens every Sunday at the same time. But the idea of death and rebirth, the idea that they can store everything on massive data centers under there so that they can essentially repopulate the earth with humans after they've fucked it up in the first place, the idea that they can do all of this essentially to force people's hand, and the fact that if people do rise up, if people do realize that they've been lied to and led, that there's every possibility that that people will have some sort of like big hammer come down on them in the form of what the elites have planned. I mean, I don't have any proof of this because I'm not a fucking psychic and I can't just peer into the future and watch the Terminator series become a documentary. But effectively, I can see it happening so fucking easily. And the idea that Iran's scary is laughable to me. Seems like the same sorts of like, oh, those scary brown people over there, we need to fight them. We need to constantly, kill their people because otherwise terrorism will take root on our shores. It seems like that same sort of fear-mongering crap to me.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that for sure. Because, like, if we go back to like the sovereignty of a nation, you look at them and like, oh, well, all this group or people from this nation have done this. And so that nation has this bad or like this amount of badness to them, so we need to stop them from doing certain things and all that good shit. So it's like it really makes it's kind of crazy, man. I don't it's nuts.
Well, and it's super nuts when you realize that most people don't go about their day even thinking about Iran until something like this comes up. But then the elites have just stirred the pot and they can get people to look anywhere they want.
Yeah, they tell you to be worried about Iran, and then suddenly everyone's worried about Iran.
Yeah, like your relatives are talking to you about politics when they avoided at dinner, and now like you can't avoid it. You can't even say at dinner, "I don't want to talk about this," because it's now suddenly important, even though it's been important this whole fucking time. Yeah, because I mean that's what they really do. They like keep us in suspension so that they can, pull the chunks out. And they do that because they feed off of the people's fear. They're like wraiths. So and
Or
that's
dementors, bro.
Yeah, right. Well, and because that's what people get wrong about Alex Jones, to be honest. When he talks about interdimensional aliens, a lot of that is allegory. He's talking about the fact that that this is what the elites think they do. A lot of them are very convinced that they're some sort of like advanced being that deserves to control the people like they do. That's the reason they use the symbology they do. That's the reason they use the language they do. That's the reason they try and create an entirely new way of speaking English in the form of legalese to force their way and to maintain the system as it stands. Because if then all you've got to do is memorize the secret tongue and you're in the club and you get exclusive access and shit. And if people don't see that, it's because they're fucking closing their eyes.
I have a a question about the Denver airport and the Georgia Guidestones, because what I don't understand is, why would the elites want to advertise that shit? Why would they want to advertise what?
And that's an interesting subject on its own, because think about it. If you can get people looking at that sort of thing, then it'll get the conspiracy theorists focused on those sorts of things, and it'll get everybody to think they're just insane and oh, well, it's just art. Oh, well, it's just rocks in the middle of Georgia. Oh, well, you can't possibly know anything more about the way things work than I do. So if you put it in the open, people think that it's not a secret conspiracy. It's
hiding in plain sight.
It's a way to have redundancy. That's as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so you think it's kind of a red herring to keep the conspiracy theorists focused on that?
Well, I mean, because the conspiracy is there. It's demonstrably there. But
right, yeah.
It's designed to get people to think that the conspiracy is not real because it's not hidden. Sweet D says in chat, she says, because they don't think anyone will believe it. That's a fairly concise way of putting it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, because also, if you keep on pointing out something like, oh, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this, people are going to eventually go, oh, well, what the fuck? Kind of like with racism right now. It's like, oh, that's racist, this is racist, this racist, racist. Like, well, that it lost its power. Same kind of thing happens. This is why conspiracy theories pop up, and which is why they're so prevalent. Well, at least that's how it can be seen. The way I see it, anyway.
Right, because it's like saturation. People can't hold anymore after a certain point, so they just get used to it. It's like you can tap somebody in the same area on their body for an hour or two, and they'll forget you were tapping on them if they can tune it out.
Exactly, it's complacency at that point in time,
Desensitization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like that, it's kind of funny because like when people they really want to find something, they will, of course. Like with any conspiracy theory, you can break this down. With flat earthers, Jesus Christ, they look purposely for that information. So like when you get to that point where you're purposely looking for it, it's kind of like, okay, well, you're purposely going out of the way for this. Now, if it's there and like, okay, here it is, I'm pointing at it. Do you see this? And everyone's like, yeah, we see it, but we don't really believe in that. And then you purposely go out of the way, like something that's not even related to what you're trying to point out, and then you try and connect it to it. People are gonna be like, yeah, definitely not, which is also hurts the conspiracy theory as it stands anyway too. Like there's no winning when it comes to conspiracy theories. This is why they set it up so well.
Right. Well, and of course the fact that if you saturate the market with a bunch of conspiracy theories that could or could not be true, then all they need to do is make sure that there are enough untrue ones that people are led down enough rabbit trails that they're never led down the central rabbit hole. So like they're so focused on finding the truth that they never find it.
Yeah, exactly. They're just chasing their own tail at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, because like I think a lot of people fail to recognize Trump isn't playing 4D chess or whatever. He's a puppet just like every other president. He's there to be the front man for the reality show. And the real 4D chess is happening in the background. It's like, oh yeah, Trump is playing 4D chess. We need a really good chess player. Well, the elites have been playing this chess game for millennia. You think Trump's going to come in and solve all your problems by joining them? Yeah, fuck that.
Well, here's my thing about that too, because like you obviously know politics, right? And hopefully everyone fucking knows politics. Otherwise, it's kind of pointless what I'm about to say. The president himself is not a dictator. When everyone votes for the president, they think they're voting for the numero uno leader of the country. It's like, no, that's not how the United States works. You see, the president isn't all powerful here. He has checks and balances. The Senate or in the Congress, they're not all powerful here. The courts are not all powerful here. They all balance each other out, right? So like when you're saying that Trump can change this, Trump can change that, no, he can provide ideas to do those things. He's a scapegoat, essentially. That's all he is. He's the person that we can point at. That's right. It, literally.
Exactly.
He's the only thing that we can only point at him, and that's it. We can't necessarily blame him for everything because it's not truly all his fault. He's not the one who's playing chess games. It's everyone involved in the government that's playing this chess game. Like he might be helping play with it a little bit, but that's about it. He's not hands off, but he's not completely just him. You see how that works? Like that, the reason it was set up like that way is so we didn't vote for a fucking one leader. We didn't vote, so we don't. What's the word? They're assholes, dictators. Haha, Daniel. Jesus Christ. Yes. So that's it's kind of when you say that the president is all powerful of the nation, you're completely wrong. That's just falsifying. And like for you to say that, oh, we elected a Nazi is going to ruin the world, it's like, no, you're wrong on that too. That's not going to happen. He can try to implement some things, but at the end of the day, if people don't want it to happen, or if Congress doesn't want it to happen, or if the fucking courts don't want it to happen, it's not going to happen. There's checks and balances for a reason. You can't just blame one thing on one person.
Well, and you know, that's if you have faith in the system, which I don't. I think that there are no real checks and balances, and that the closest thing we get to checks and balances is the corporate structure, and the fact that they're beholden to one another, so they can't fuck like too many people over at once, because it might violate the core of another like sister or brother corporation's group, right? Like their core constituency, their regular consumers. So you can't continue doing business with somebody you alienate their base of. So I mean that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm saying I agree with you with that. Continue. Sorry.
Like I couldn't get a Taco Bell sponsorship if I, said that anybody who eats fucking Taco Bell is a goddamn dumbass, and they're also probably fat, slow, and stupid.
Be careful, man. You just said it.
Well, yeah, but I also talked about how I bought Taco Bell because it's cheap nutrition, like yesterday on my radio show. So I think I should be, well, today actually, because I recorded it yesterday. So I think I should be covered on that thing. I was,
Yeah, you're balanced. You're balanced.
Yeah, there you go. No, if I got a sponsorship from anyone, if you're out there, VPX Sports, I would love a sponsorship from you, because I drink fucking Red Lion and Bang all the time. And Protein Rush when I, can't find a better source of protein in the morning. I normally just eat a bunch of eggs, though, so don't hold that against me. But either way, yeah, I've always said that I would love like a sponsorship from those specific people, VPX Sports. But I don't think that's going to happen, because they're a sports company, and I don't think they just want to say, oh, yeah, if you want to stream for a really long time, drink these nerve-shredding chemicals we advise having, in multiple servings. But whatever, side subject. I'm actually having one right now. It's a Star Blast flavored Bang, which is very effective. So, and I had that with a caffeine pill, so I'm pretty wired right now.
I'm just ingesting cancer while I'm talking to you guys, so it's all good.
Oh yeah, well, and like I smoke occasionally, maybe like once or twice a month. But I try not to do anything that could get me addicted to anything but caffeine, because I've been addicted to that since I was 4. So. But either way, what was I going to say? So, but yeah, they get it saturated. They get, and that's the thing they do, because if they can keep people distracted, if they can keep people looking the other way perpetually, because there's always another way to look, and if they can also then get people on board with thinking that there are checks and balances, then people won't look for the business deals that are done to actually make decisions. And so they'll think that, oh yeah, if I just vote in a certain representative, everything will be fine. When factually speaking, it won't be. It's a cycle of left and right all the time, and it always will be. And it's because both the left and the right are beholden to fundamentally similar interests.
Well, yeah, of course. And also you got to think about it too. Like, let's say that, we drop our anti-statism. We're going to go right to libertarian, right? I'm pretty sure that's where we all lie. And so like, if we were to go for that, we'd have to vote in a libertarian. And even then it's still like, then it becomes 3 parties that are gunning for it. But at the same time, we already have the 2 parties, Republican and Democrat, who have all the money already, who have all the publicity already. With libertarians, we always get the shit candidates who don't really know what the fuck they're talking about sometimes. It's like, well, shit, I think Ron Paul was like the closest one we had. He was doing the best job at that back in, 2008 or some shit, right? And so,
well,
looking at all,
I mean, there are a couple of people that are coming out that seem fairly legit, like, oh, fuck, what was his name? I always forget that Nicholas Guillermo, or Daniel Guillermo? No, something. I forgot his name already. Adam Kokesh is running. There are fairly libertarian people that are running. I just, I won't participate in that process because essentially I think that the only thing it's good for is spreading the ideas. And so since voting doesn't work and nobody would vote for them anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the issue too that I would have with it. Like, if I were to go back and be like, hey, nah, we can change this if we vote for the other party, other people aren't going to look at me seriously. Like, if you look at it, like, all around the internet, anywhere you talk to people, you're like, oh, yeah, I'm a libertarian. People usually don't disagree with libertarians the most because I guess we're the most agreeable motherfuckers because, we are. We don't give a fuck what you do. But the thing is, like, when they do that, like, oh, you have no stances on anything, it's like, no, we do. You just don't take us seriously because we don't take your side versus theirs and all that other good shit. So it's like, well, we're literally fighting for, we want everyone to be equal because we know it can happen. And if we have to do it through the state, we have to do it through the state kind of thing. But, I don't think any of us here really want a state. But if we had to go back and do it that way, if we have to, I think that would be the best way to go for it. But the problem is convincing others that, hey, no, this can happen if you vote for this party. The issue is the fact that people they only want the two. It's like they purposely only want the two. They don't want to look for other avenues. Like, oh, well, my party is showing this person now, and so it's going to be better this time, and I'm going to vote for them. Oh, that party is showing this person now. It's not my party, but I like that person better, and well, there's only the two because, I'm not going to look for any other party, so I'm just going to go vote for that guy. And it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. If you want change, go for something different. Stop going for the same two-party system. But people aren't going to look for that. They don't want to find another party system. They don't want to find another party to represent them.
Well, right, especially since the parties specifically don't represent them entirely usually. Like, people all have their own individual interests, and trying to find a party that supports you involves making a lot of sacrifices to begin with. So why not sacrifice more and just go with one of the big two?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense too, for sure. Like, of course, no party's going to be directly out for you. You're never going to have someone who's 100% out for you, and I think we all can agree on that for sure. Like, not one person's like you're never going to 100% agree with one person. That's a damn given. But if you want change, like, why not try to go for the different one? Even if like this might get me lynched here in a second, but even if the party is supposedly like the evilest evil in the world compared to what we have now, if you want something different, go for that something different. If that makes any sense. I hope that makes sense.
It does.
Okay. Because, like, to me, it's like, well, if we keep on doing it, it's like insanity, right? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. Well, we are fucking insane because we keep on doing the same thing over and over again.
Well, it's that according to Einstein. It's not according to the dictionary definition.
No, of course not. But I like his way he put it, sir.
Yeah, I don't know. Because you can do the same thing. I'm gonna be an anarchist. I'm gonna be banging my head against the wall for the next decade or so, however long it takes me to reduce the size of government or eliminate it altogether. Probably the rest of my life if my pessimism and cynicism check out. So I mean, it's
me too.
I'm gonna keep on doing the same shit over and fucking over, and I don't think that makes me insane. I think that makes me persistent. So
yeah, exactly. Well, I agree with you on that too. But I think you know what I was trying to say anyway. But yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, of course, you can. Science obviously isn't insane because they do the same things over and over again to test their experiments and all that. They have to be able to do the same thing over and over again and get the same result. So obviously, it's not that insane. But the way he said it, I kind of get it, and that's where I'm coming from at the same time. It's like, well, if you keep on doing this and you're expecting a change, it's not going to change because you keep on doing that.
Well, right, especially since the same sorts of people are the same sorts of people no matter what. They're all beholden to the same interests, election after election. They're all beholden to for the Iran thing and for net neutrality, both. They're beholden to big telecom and these big military industrial complex motherfuckers. Fucking DARPANET was what formed the basis for this internet that we're using now. It's the reason MeshNet is so valuable, because you can escape DARPANET. You can get off the net that they want you to be on, that they've learned to control and manipulate and use to control and manipulate others. If you're off of that, you're less controllable and less manipulable. So I mean, it's definitely valuable to consider alternatives. But just, you know, it's also valuable and much more valuable than that to know what the true alternatives are, because you're not going to get an alternative to a Democrat with a Republican, and you're not going to get an alternative to a Republican with a Democrat. Every time one of them gets in office, they just do what their opposition would have done at the same time as doing what they would have done, and they say, well, we have to compromise in order to get things done. Well, that's
Yeah.
exactly what people do in voting. They try to compromise to get things done, and they get a few bones thrown to them in the form of whatever socialism they wanted, but they don't get anything in the long run because they're still trusting the same motherfuckers over and over.
Exactly. Like that's also my point too. Like, and the thing is, like, why we also can't change it, or why it would take so fucking long to change it if we were to go by the country's rules and we were to play by them instead of trying to get people to say fuck the state. It would be so hard to change it to be truly, or more equal, I should say, because even just beyond the presidency, you have any candidate, and even in the courts, you have Republican or Democrat. That's who they always pick, is Republican or Democrat, Republican or Democrat. Oh, balance it out, Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat. So it's like you only have two parties, and in the presidency, in the House, in the courts, you only have those two. So we have to change all of those, not just the presidency as well. And like we keep on going to the same people for those same positions.
Right. Well, and of course, the left is always complaining that the rich keep on getting richer and the poor keep on getting poorer, but they're not willing to do anything about it by stopping electing corporate candidates. Like Obama didn't end the corporate welfare state. He didn't do anything about it, really. The only thing he did was embolden it to find new ways to hide. And it's the same thing with Bush. Like, people elected him to reduce the size of government. What did we get? Oh, well, it may seem smaller here, but it's also spread across the globe because of the war on, quote, terror. So, I mean, it's giving people the same thing over and over and over, and they keep on going back for more because they think that that's what's necessary for positive change.
Exactly. It's kind of sad. It's very sad, actually. Not kind of. It's fucking very sad. It's as sad as me. Jesus.
Well, and I don't mean to just disparage people either, because there's every reason to believe that that people have the capacity to change, because there's like an undercurrent under all of this of people who want something different, who want something better, and who just suppress that because they're told to. And I think that's what we really need to do. We need to reactivate that sort of thing that they've dried out.
No, I concur. We need another fucking Boston Tea Party, right? Like, fuck.
Well, and we need it to look better than the Boston Tea Party did. Maybe
Well,
don't dress up as Native Americans in this day and age of triggered blah blah. But let me
dress up as a feminist.
Well, right. What was I gonna say? Yeah, Zach, what do you have to say about any of this? Because you've been kind of quiet, so I don't want to think that we're just mulling you over here.
That's all right. I did want to give a shout out to Larry Sharp of the LP, who's running for governor of my state, New York. And he's just fantastic. I had the opportunity to meet him once, and he's a real people person. And he's one of the few libertarians who are really good at talking to statists, like really good. And because he listens to people and he responds to their issues and their concerns. And yeah, just lately I've been thinking just my only hope for on the political level is in local elections. And changing, local government, because that's really somewhat in line with the idea of decentralization, which is ultimately what I want more than anything. Is just the decentralization of government. So yeah, if I can make my state freer, by voting for a different governor, then I'm going to do that. Even though I'm a theoretical anarchist, if I can have any kind of influence over in decentralizing power, I'm gonna do that.
Oh, I completely get that, Zach. Like, it goes back to what I was saying about the Constitution. Use it as a thing to look at and be like, okay, we can do something about that. Same thing with what you're doing. You can still vote and still believe in anarchism, but you kind of have to use the system at the same time in order to get that through their heads. Like you can do that, and you can also go the route where it's just trying to discuss it, trying to convince them to do it versus voting someone in who can do it. Because at the same time, like we were just discussing, they're just going to do the same thing over and over again, possibly if they're trying to do one thing. You need someone like really strong in order to accomplish what you want done. And if your guy is able to do that, by all means, awesome. That's titties, dude. Like, go for it. But at the same time, there's always going to be things that you can't control what they do or what they're trying to do, or like especially because they have to compromise, in order to keep that position, so they can try to change it the way we want it to be changed.
Right. So use it as a bounce off point.
Yeah, essentially. I think that's where Zach's getting at.
Yeah, I'm as cynical as anyone when it comes to the political process. But as long as there's opportunity, I'm going to try at least.
Well, and on that level, then, I mean, have you been looking into all of the potential candidates of the LP for like president this year?
No, I haven't. Not for president, really.
What do you think of Kokesh? Either of you?
As a person, I don't really trust his character. He just, from my own judgment and my own gut instinct, I don't trust him much. His character, he comes off very egotistic, and he admits himself that he's a what do you call it, exhibitionist. So he does thrive on attention. As far as his campaign for getting away or doing away with the federal government, Kokesh for not president 2020. I like the idea behind that, but I just don't see it going anywhere.
Well, right, because I don't think he has that sort of power.
No, or influence for that matter. There's just, I don't see him getting much attention there.
He might be something that people are willing to look at for a moment, though.
Maybe. And I definitely definitely support the idea of dissolving the United States a la the USSR. And that's something to think about. In conversations where I'm talking about decentralization and dissolving the United States, I say, people get real scared about that. They real scared, and they just dismiss it out of hand. And I say, look, the USSR did it successfully, and was there some suffering? Of course, but overall, look, are people of the former Soviet Union better off today than they were while the USSR was still intact? Of course, and like no one would disagree with that. So the idea that splitting up the United States would necessarily be like catastrophic or anything, I think is pretty easily dismissed.
Well, the only problem that I would have with like dismantling, well, I don't have a problem with dismantling the state at all. But the issue I could see with other people's having is the whole commerce, right? Trade and all that good stuff. Like, I think that's the biggest issue people have, is like the economy would be greatly affected because like you have to regulate commerce and all that good stuff. That's what part of Congress's job was, right? And things like that, So that's probably the biggest issue people have with doing what would probably work out the best, is separating the states. much harder into like separate countries or things like that. It'd be harder to regulate the commerce, and they had a whole bunch of different things you have to do with it.
Yeah, I agree that that's probably one of people's biggest concerns, and I think one possible solution to that is I think better than just dissolving the federal government in one fell swoop, or even no matter how gradually you try to do it. I think the better solution may be individual secession, just one at a time. You know, maybe Texas secedes first, and then California secedes, and then from there we have working examples of possible secession.
Well, I agree with you on that as well. However, I wouldn't say like the bigger states, right? So because Texas and California have such big economies, they have a huge effect on the rest of the country, right? Especially California, they have a huge economy because they're the media capital of the world. They are really huge import-export state as well. So like they have a huge influence on the economy of the world. So like if they were to go second, or just the United States, my bad, and the world too, but fuck it. So if they were to secede second or something, that would cause a huge crash for the rest of the world. Now, if we were able to come up with a good trade with them, still allow them to be their separate country and everything like that, I can see that helping. But also, I would say that we should probably let the smaller states secede first, see how they do. They might need a little bit of help at the same time because they're not as big economies as Texas and California. But I can see them being just fine if they were to secede by themselves, but it would throw everyone else off balance, if that makes any sense.
Well,
I agree
there's
with that.
something that I think gets lost in this conversation often, and that is essentially, why would they want to secede? I mean, what would be the benefit, and why haven't they already done it if there is that benefit?
Not quite sure. Well, I know that when Obama was elected for his second term, Texas was all pissed off and they wanted to secede, right? And even on the White House thing, it was like, hey, we have this petition that we're signing. Texas wants to secede, and they are not allowed to secede. So no state is technically allowed to secede from the union. That's part of the issue here. Is like they're technically not allowed to. So it's really hard to get them to do so. Like if they really want to, they're going to try to, but they're always going to get turned down. Especially like I think Texas part of it.
And before we get any further into this, let me do three things for housekeeping purposes. First off, Rollo is here to join us for the last hour of this of this broadcast here. He couldn't show up until now. I think he was at work. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us your opinions, because I'm sure you've been following it at least loosely, on net neutrality and the Iran deal that Trump pulled out of.
Oh, hey, thanks, Jeremiah. So yeah, I'm Rollo McFlugel over at McFlugel.com with Slappy Jones too, and we have a weekly podcast as well as a blog, and we also have LibertyMugs.com, which is exactly what it sounds like. We sell mugs with libertarian themes.
And he also sponsors Moment of Rage with Liberty Mugs, so thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you for having us as a sponsor. Appreciate that. So net neutrality. Yeah, it's kind of, I always fall back. I mean, I'm an anarchist, so I always fall back on the state can't solve our problems. So the issue is not how we regulate the ISPs. The issue is that ISPs are regulated by the state, at least. So yeah, I have no hope whatsoever for the state trying to solve any problem related to that. I don't know if there is any specific issues about net neutrality you're talking about, or just kind of general things.
Well, because net neutrality was reestablished.
Oh, wait, what? When?
Yeah, like today.
Really? Oh, that's great. And
Yeah, because see, this is going to be the new, like, we're going to just do the general philosophical topics on Sunday for shit shooting Sunday, like we normally do. But this is Real News Wednesday, so it's going to be a news related show. I'm going to have like 5 or 6 topics in the future to discuss, but we had 2 topics today that were relatively beefy, so we just did that.
Yeah, I had no idea that was a thing. That they
Yeah, I
were
only know about it 'cause
reinstituting net neutrality today. So, yeah, that didn't really make the news cycle that much, did it? Or am I just that out of the loop?
Well, it's trending on Twitter right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
But either way, yeah. So on the other subject, the Iran deal, do you think Trump should have or shouldn't have pulled out of it, or do you think it matters at all?
I'm not even really that up to speed on the Iran deal that much. I mean, I heard one of the podcast, I think it was Tom Woods on his podcast, were talking about it. I don't even want to say too much because I'm that ignorant on the subject. Unfortunately.
Well, okay. I've asked a couple questions here that might be easier to answer on that level. How would you convince people who supported the state that Iran wasn't the bad guy, that it wasn't scary?
Oh, sure.
Because I think that's the reason a lot of people want the Iran deal to begin with.
Right. Well, it was Gareth Porter I heard this week. And he was talking about a point I never heard before, which is a point that I really think should be brought up, is that throughout its history, Iran has never really had any evidence of using either chemical weapons or other weapons of mass destruction. It's ironic that people always talk about how they're, Islamists and that's what's directing their agenda, but using weapons of mass destruction like that is against their Islamic beliefs. So, I mean, are they strict Muslims and following all the rules of Islam, or are they not strict Muslims and following all the rules of Islam? So I think people, are just ignorant of that fact that they've never used it, and
they're not very nuanced.
Right. Well, I mean, people tend to, they've heard a couple cherry-picked lines from the Quran and decided that they're experts on Islam. So,
right, it'd be like,
it's unfortunate.
How many people here have seen the Boy in a Band video where he made this hardcore emo rap with nothing but Bible verses, and it's all like, fucking violence and blood and shit like that? How many of you have heard that?
I've heard it. I'm actually a fan of his.
Yeah, I really, really liked that particular approach, because it shows that pretty much. I mean, Christopher Hitchens had a term for those religions, and he called them all Middle Eastern death cults, and it was because pretty much all of them are predicated on violence. Now, he did say that Islam was currently a threat because it refused to be reformed, and that has some merit to it, but he also said that they were all Middle Eastern death cults, and that eschewing religion, or at least being flexible about it, had a great deal to do with any sort of Enlightenment movement.
Yeah, I think it's I mean, people refer to Islam, and that's kind of, I think, would be similar, as far as I'm aware of, it would be like referring to Christianity, and Christianity. I mean, you can kind of group it all together as one thing, but there's a ton of different sects within Christianity. So to act like there's, the Islam is a monolith of beliefs is, I think, unfair. And also, to your point about that rap where it had all the terrible things from the Bible, I mean, I'm a practicing Catholic, and so I don't, have any issues with religion per se. But I mean, I think you ask any Christian, and you point out some nasty verses in the Bible, and they would say, "Well, I don't agree with that."
Especially since most Christians, like most religious people, aren't really familiar with the source material in any intimate way. They're just saying they're Christians. They're not actually walking with Christ.
Right. But even beside that point, I mean, that's why I empathize with a lot of, with Islam, is that, all right, you can cherry pick some lines out of a book that makes people, and then say that, oh, you absolutely believe this because it's in your holy book.
Well,
Well, I
isn't
mean,
religion? I'm sorry. May I interject real quick?
sure.
Yeah, isn't religion like either way? Like any religion, isn't it more of a personal thing anyway? So like, even if you do read the whole Bible or whatever religious book you decide to read, it's all a personal thing. It's like you decide what works for you from that religion. Like you agree a whole bunch with it, and then there's certain things you won't agree with. But at the end of the day, it's still a personal thing with you and your God or whatever, right?
Yeah, and even, I mean, as a Catholic, you're supposed to have obedience to the faith and to the church, but at the same time, you should also, it's extremely important to question your faith. And if you have an issue with something, I mean, there's been a lot of very smart people throughout the history of various religions that have come up with these ideas. And there's been issues I've had with the Catholic, like church teaching and doctrine, and wondering, like, well, how is it this way? And you kind of look into it, and it's like, oh, it actually makes some sense. The problem is that there's a lot of people that tend to not really understand their faith very well, and they're the ones that are often the loudest, and the ones that tend to want to kind of shove it down other people's throats. So those of us who want to just have that personal faith and just kind of like exactly what you're saying, have that personal relationship or the personal faith, it gets clouded by everyone else. And then you get that weird kind of thing where someone criticizes the Christian or whoever religious person who is acting like kind of an idiot. And then it kind of goes into, well, you start defending the faith overall instead of, and so it's just like anything else.
Actions.
Right. Like anything else, it turns into this whole rugamaroo where you're no longer arguing what just your own thing, and what turns into you try to like end up defending your faith a little bit, and then it turns into, it sounds like you're defending this idiot. So where you shouldn't be having an argument with this other guy, it's just all it turns into a mess. It's, long story short, so it's unfortunate. But we all kind of deal with it. I don't know. It's frustrating.
Okay, well, on that level, we have another last minute entrant to the conversation. So why don't you introduce yourself and give your opinion on net neutrality and Trump pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal?
Wow. I'm Finian, just joining. Sorry for being late. I did want to make this earlier. Net neutrality. Wow. Well, we already know the government, quote unquote, controls the internet. So I obviously don't like that. And I'm looking forward to the day when governments don't control it and we have power over it ourselves.
And when they don't control anything.
Yeah, exactly. The Iran deal, I think, was done on purpose, and it's related to what's going on in the Koreas. So basically, they did what they did on the Korea Peninsula to make room for a larger conflict with Iran, and he's pulling out of the agreement on purpose to make that conflict more likely. So there's that. Yeah, they're looking to have a larger war over there, and it's going to be a huge disaster and not going to be a good thing for anybody, even us here in the quote unquote West.
But okay, so before we proceed, though, introduce yourself. What do you do?
Oh, sorry. I'm a private investigator, and the main profession I have now is doing that work and also doing residential security consulting for people. And of course,
cool.
I'm a friend of individual liberty, and I'm looking to further it.
So
if you need something to work for you, let me know.
So
if you're in Virginia, let me know. Yeah.
So on that level,
build a private security company.
Yeah, apologies for getting lost in translation there. On that level, I think you said your name was Daniel and Zach. What do you think of that? what was just said by Rollo and Finian. Any feedback?
No, Zach, you want to go first? You can.
No, I didn't really have anything. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I think that they brought up some really good points. Like it seems like it could be definitely related to the Koreas right now, especially because like we just had Trump say that he got the Koreas to stop doing the nuke thing, and now he's pulling out of Iran and everything like that. It's like, okay, so he's making it look different directions. I can definitely see where he's coming from with that for sure.
And okay, and on that level, does anybody here think that that pulling out of the Iran deal would reduce tensions?
No.
No. Yeah, the whole purpose is to increase them.
Yeah, no, there's no way.
Definitely not. It's not going to stop anything, man.
So, given the fact that he is trying to be a world leader, what motives do you think he would have, any of you, think he would have for trying to increase tensions?
Israel told him to.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yep.
Definitely, yeah. Shit, I think that pretty much sums it up, honestly.
Yeah. Well, so to get back to like an earlier subject, then, net neutrality. How would you, either Finian or Rollo, because we already sort of went this earlier, how would you go about trying to provide for like a freer internet, or just maintaining the level of freedom that the internet has now? What would be your approach?
Finney, you go first.
I have not thought about this too much, but my first impression would be to make it all into private individuals' control. So it would be something like Steemit or some other decentralized platform where individuals would step forward and be allowed to take control over nodes. And
so like we're talking like what I was
node
mentioning earlier, like mesh networks, right?
Yeah, well, when they control those nodes, it takes the power away from governments, and you have millions of those different people, and they're all connected in a mesh network, and it creates a network that can't be controlled by any one group or government or nation, and then everybody has more free access to it without censorship, without major controls over content. I mean, even in the US, tons of our content is controlled, and there's these partnerships with companies like Google, and even like in China, there's just certain things you can't even see. Like if you wanted to go out and look for it, you're not going to find it because the government, of course, blocks it. And people think, oh, well, that doesn't happen in the United States and other Western countries. Yeah, it does. You might not realize it does, but it definitely does. Just install a VPN and run searches from different country origins, and you'll see how bad it actually is.
Yeah, I think kind of holding your breath, waiting for the government to do the right thing is going to not turn out too well for you. So I think the alternatives is really the best way to go, and hoping that the market, people come up with better ideas. I know there's I think it's high frequency radio can be used as an internet connection. That's relevant more towards for cryptocurrency type stuff. But you hope that as that technology develops a little bit, that they can send better signals and start competing with, maybe some Wi-Fi and the 4G stuff, and also with satellite internet. There's companies, I know I think Virgin Mobile is working on putting satellites into space to provide internet services, and those, they're probably going to be regulated by the state. And Virgin Mobile, they're likely in bed with the government, just like every other big company. But the more that there's those alternatives, I think the better off we are. It's kind of tough to say as an individual, other than just promoting these ideas of free markets and that the state is the problem. it's going to be difficult in the meantime. There's going to be some casualties as a result of the government's control over it. And I hate to sound like, well, it's just kind of what we're going to have to deal with. But I don't see much of an alternative in the short term. But my hope, like everything else, is that the market always outstrips the state. So it might be tough right now, or in the next little bit. But I'm hopeful.
And Truth Force in chat says that mesh networks technically can't scale. So just so you know, millions of users connected on a mesh network just crashes. Well, that's true, but on a level like that, if a mesh network was just connected to a local to a local sort of I guess information gathering network, then that mesh network could still technically get all of the information it needs. It would just need to be supplied by a non-mesh network. So some sort of decentralized node-based system, maybe on a blockchain like Steemit, like Finium was suggesting.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And the other thing is, I don't even know how much we would have to scale it at this point. And I'm speaking on ignorance right here because I don't know the technical details. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But for people like us, I mean, we're still just a tiny, tiny, tiny portion of the population. So we don't need everyone on networks like this, just enough that hopefully could support those of us who have things to say that the state doesn't like to hear.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like the mesh networks in Iran and Hong Kong.
Oh, okay, so they do use them currently. That's how they
in some places for some things, like FireChat is a mesh network app.
Okay.
Yeah, ideally the system would be set up in a way so that the majority of the data transactions that are going on are on the most local level possible. So, just as an example, say city level or even a zip code, most of your data is going to be exchanged in that local area. And then the wider and further out you get, the less data transaction. I'm not going to be transacting data with Hong Kong from Virginia a lot. So it seems to me, at least, as I'm not an engineer, of course, but it seems to me there would be a way to create a mesh network similar to a blockchain that does thousands of transactions a second. I mean, you can even bring up the Bankster coin Ripple. I mean, that's the whole point behind it. It's able to do that many transactions. And if they're doing it for financial, data transfers, and they can do it for social media and even video and stuff.
Well, and on that level, like I asked earlier, would you store a server in your house and pay the extra added electricity if it meant a freer internet?
Yeah, that's actually my goal with eventually with McFlugel.com to run our own server. After we had a DMCA takedown notice from Mr. Lenny Posner recently.
Oh, yeah. Fuck that guy. Talk about that.
Oh, yeah. So there was Lenny Posner. His son is Noah Posner, who was killed in the Sandy Hook shooting a couple years ago. And so there was an article, I think it was We Are Change, ran this article with a picture, someone in Pakistan in a protest about, I think, violence at schools or something, or just kids getting killed through violence, had a picture on this collage in this rally in Pakistan after there was an attack there. And so a lot of people saw that and said, hey, this is more proof that Sandy Hook was an inside job. Why is this kid from the United States? He was killed in this Pakistan thing too. But how it was explained was that someone went on Facebook and just grabbed a bunch of pictures of kids that were killed in school violence and made a collage of it with like kind of the caption, these kids went to school one day and never came home. And presumably someone in Pakistan at this rally printed it out and was carrying it around. So I wrote an article showing this picture and saying like, hey, let's, maybe before we run these articles saying that this is proof of a conspiracy or something, let's maybe do some homework because it doesn't make us look good. If there's very reasonable explanations for why these things happen. And I made the point to say, hey, look, I don't want people to stop questioning things. Absolutely question all this stuff. The government does enough fishy things as it is, but let's just be really careful. And I wrote this like, I think it was at least, or it may have been 2 years ago. And then I got out of nowhere, an email from our Bluehost saying that someone said we were violating their copyright. And it was Lenny Posner. And I did a little bit of research, and he's just going around on the internet, and anyone who had a picture of Noah on their website, he would send them DMCA takedown notices. And, you know, he posted the source of the original. It was a file from a Google Drives, which the timestamp on it that it was loaded there was after the date of our article being published. Also, where we got it, or where the picture was from, was posted on a public Facebook page. And according to Facebook's rules, it, you know, once you post something there, it's anyone can use it. And also, just according to normal copyright laws, we didn't violate anything there. Not that I agree with copyright or intellectual property, but even if you go by the state's rules on it, we didn't violate anything on it.
Man, this internet sounds so free already.
Oh, I know. So I sent Bluehost an email back explaining all of this. And also the other thing is he posted a copyright, I forget what it is, whatever the registration, I think it was like the registration number of his alleged copyright that he has for the picture. And so I went on the U.S. Government Copyright Office's website and found that in order to do a check on a registration number, you had to pay them $200. So the burden of proof goes on the defendant to prove that you're not doing anything wrong. So it's really just a messed up system altogether, and it gives this guy, and I know, and Bluehost just, they get it, and they just default to like, you know, sorry, but not much we're gonna do. We just you gotta take it down, and if you want to fight it, you fight it. But in the meantime, we're gonna err on the side of, you know,
in the meantime,
not getting
roll over.
sued. Yeah. I think what is it? Whoever runs WordPress, I think has fought on behalf of their clients for stuff like this. But at the same time, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it would be great if Bluehost fought for me, but I mean, we're a small website compared to stuff. I don't blame them for not spending a lot of resources there necessarily. It sucks, but what are you going to do? So that I blacked out the spot in the picture where it had Noah Posner there, and just so I didn't want to, you know, I could sit there and fight it, but I'm probably going to lose. And so is it worth losing my website? I don't think so, but it made me think about, all right, so this is all, it's the line is so thin, the thread is so fragile.
And it's all centrally controlled.
Right.
Well, okay, so let's then, like, because all these people coming on at the last minute, we got one last person who wanted to discuss this stuff. He was posting in chat, and I've had him on my channel before to talk about what he does on Steam It. So let's what do you do, Truth Force?
I look busy. No, I'm just kidding. Hey guys, I don't know if is everyone here on Steam It. I'm Truth Force on Steam It, so I might have interacted with I see a few faces on here that I recognize, but yeah. So I just wanted to real quick add before I forget. So when we were talking about the mesh network thing, so just at least with the current technology, it would be too latent if there was too many connections. But there's a lot of interesting cryptocurrency projects that are working on essentially allowing billions of transactions per second, or I mean, pretty much infinite amount. So on Ethereum, they have a few upgrades they have to do before they can get there. So probably isn't until sometime late next year. But it's called Plasma. If you guys want to like read the white paper on that, it's pretty good. But essentially, you can create your own side chain. So like any game developer can create their own side chain, or like a business or an exchange can make their own side chain. And then you can do as many transactions on that side chain as you want. And then when you want to commit it to the main Ethereum blockchain, you just send one transaction, which has essentially an entire history of everything that happened on the side chain, which is then committed to the Ethereum blockchain, which is then permanent. And then it can all work backwards to prove everything because of all the algorithms and the Merkle trees and stuff involved in it. So it's pretty cool, and that's essentially what the Lightning Network does for Bitcoin, except on a smaller scale, because it's like the Lightning Network isn't infinite. There's actually a lot of problems with the Lightning Network that most people don't really talk about. For one thing, you have to be online to use it and to receive funds. So like I couldn't send funds to you unless you're actually online, which is a major pitfall of the system that really doesn't make any sense in this world, because you can't be online 24/7, obviously. And
Well,
even if
unless
it
the
were,
5Gers get their way.
Puerto Rico happen, where there's no way for you to get online even if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
right, yeah, like if the government was blocking online access, then you couldn't get on and get any payments, so it kind of defeats the whole purpose of it. But yeah, so I just wanted to real quick say that about the plasma on Ethereum. There's some other ones that are doing similar stuff to that too, that are pretty interesting. Anything with like a side chain that is able to do all these offline transactions, then commit it to the main chain in one transaction, essentially will solve the problem of scalability. So probably sometime next year, Ethereum could handle an infinite amount of transactions, essentially, do the side chains.
Yeah. And well, okay. So in terms of that, you said that scalability is a problem for meshNets in general. Care to elaborate on that so that people are sure what you're talking about there?
Yeah, so it's the same concept as when you DDoS someone's server and you take it offline. You just have too many requests that are incoming for the server to be able to handle the bandwidth. So if you have a bunch of people running, for example, like if they were all running Lightning Network on their own home computer and their internet speed only can handle like maybe 10,000 incoming connections, once it goes past that, you're just gonna get kicked off the Lightning Network. So
right. Well, and of course, like just to give like a for dummies explanation here, servers aren't magic. They're just storage devices with processors that handle incoming and outgoing requests for that information. So it's not like servers are some magic cabinet that some nerd just controls and like waves a wand and suddenly you get internet. Servers are just storage, and realistically they need the ability to both receive and serve that information, which is a physical issue. It requires energy transmission across long distances, and it requires like making sure that all the information is gotten there by verifying packets, which are like just basically small amounts of it, have reached their destination. So it's definitely not like magic. It's something where if you don't have the proper infrastructure, it's not going to work. So, but go ahead.
and there's oh, go ahead. Yep.
Sorry. Yeah. The exact system that we're talking about here, what I was recommending earlier is like for right now, actually, most people don't realize it, but a lot of the, say from like Puerto Rico to Florida, those are actually hardwired internet connections. And it's one of the reasons why the government maintains control over them is because there's so much physical infrastructure involved in them. And earlier, he was talking about Virgin, and I've also heard of SpaceX doing this. Basically, we'll have competing satellite networks that will allow us to have those, over the ocean links. They will be replaced by wireless ones. And sure, you'll have the 15-second delay or whatever it is with those systems, but again, most of your communications will be on a local level. So hopefully that would be a model I would hope that people work towards, is those larger links from like, the East Coast of the United States to Europe, you'd have to use a satellite link and you'd have competing links. So it wouldn't be like one could shut down and you wouldn't be able to do it. And everything else would be more local, and they could be controlled from private companies or groups of people or even individuals. And then that way, it would take it completely out of the government's control. Right.
Right. And then latency would be less of an issue that way.
Yeah, that's true. You could even have a client or something that sends some of the data over one of those links and the other amount of data over the other, and then you minimize that delay, the satellite delay.
I'm just waiting for one of the other people on the call to just scream nerds at us. So
Nerds!
Nerds. Yeah.
But yeah, so before we like spend the rest of the talk on net neutrality, what is your view on the Iran deal, Truth Force?
Oh man, on the Iran deal, I think I just have to say that I'm too ignorant to really understand it all.
Okay.
You're not alone. I said the same thing.
Well, keep in mind that when he's pulling out of it, like he did, the exact same time that he's pulled out of it, Israel has been making a concerted and direct effort to attack Iranian infrastructure and forces inside Syria. So the two are like exactly aligned. There's no coincidence there. It's happening on purpose.
And all after Trump made Jerusalem the capital of Israel, basically ignoring the Palestinians who were there before.
I guess there is one thing I could say on it. So like my impression of it kind of was that when he moved the embassy to Israel, that it was kind of like a power play to say, like, kind of shove it in everybody's face, like, yeah, we're with Israel. And then it kind of also it would embolden Israel to then lash out now that they know the United States, they just put the embassy there. Are they going to take it back tomorrow because Israel attacks everybody? Probably not, right? So I kind of figured that maybe since it's there now they're going to be emboldened to attack even more than they have been already. And I was looking at a map the other day. I never really knew this about Israel. I'm kind of a novice in this area, but I was looking at a map that showed like the expansion and how much bigger Israel's been getting over the years. That was something surprising. I've never been taught in school or anybody's ever really told me. So it seems like they're just trying to expand as much as they can, essentially.
And they use war and conflicts to expand, yes.
Well, because the hegemony that the U.S. has been building is a bubble, and the bigger that bubble is, the more influence it has.
Yeah, that's about all I know about the subject.
So, well, okay, so do you think Iran is a threat? Let me ask you that.
A threat to us? Probably not. Maybe a threat to some of the allies in the area and just disrupting the Middle East in general. But I mean, with the amount of military spending we have, I'm sure there's so many secret things we have to shoot down missiles and nukes that we'll never know about until it's declassified like 30 or 40 years later. I probably think we're okay if anybody ever shot a bunch of nukes at us, except if like maybe one of the bigger superpowers did. But if like Iran shot some at us, I'm sure we'd shoot them all down. I don't really know if one way or the other. I mean, can't really guess at what all the secrets we have, but I don't think Iran would be a threat to us in general. I mean, we took out so many. I mean, how long did it take us to defeat Saddam Hussein? Like weeks, and we destroyed like their entire conventional army essentially. So I mean, unless they have like thousands of nukes to launch at us at the same time, I don't see how they would be a threat to us exactly.
Well, right. Plus, there's so many anti-missile technologies that there was probably a way to neutralize threats mid-air, at least before the radiation sets in.
Yeah, I mean, essentially like a fucking middle schooler trying to fight, an MMC, an MMA fighter. It's like they can't really do too much to us unless they have someone backing them or they have a shitload more than we expect them to have, which I'm pretty sure they don't. Just like Truth was saying.
And it's certainly a massive benefit to be able to support Israel, who has essentially been an ally for a really long time of the U.S. interests. So there's that element of it too. I mean, you can boost Israel's attack on Iran, and that's the like one of the easiest things to do with reference to this sort of policy. But because I can see we're hitting dead air here. Who here would be willing to take part in decentralization efforts if it meant that the state would constantly attack you? Because that's the real question. If we're talking about Iran as a potential person that U.S. interests are targeting, would you be willing to be one of the people that U.S. interests target if it meant securing a better future and a freer internet and things like that? How much are you willing to personally sacrifice to make sure that we get a better future is a good question, I think.
Well, hopefully it's not mine and I go first. Kind of selfish like that, guys. Yeah. Um, I would see. I would let anyone do whatever the fuck they want to me. Honestly, not in like the sense of where it's like I'm not going to respect myself or anything like that, of course. But if someone makes me their scapegoat and because they feel the need to do so or whatever the fuck reason, they feel that I'm the worst thing that needs to happen, or they're gonna get rid of me for the greater good. By all means, let them do so. Like, I'm not going to try to stop them if they honestly think that's what it's for. Like we said earlier with justification, at the end of the day, they're either going to do it or they're not going to do it. And why do they do it? And then we can judge it upon it. We can't really we can judge their idea before they do so. But until then, just kind of got to let them do it or not and then see afterwards. But if they want to scapegoat me, by all means, let them do it. Fuck it.
Yeah, and nothing that we do on the internet is private. I mean, if you're encrypting it offline and then you put it on the internet and then the person on the opposite side does the opposite of the process, everything we're doing is being logged and recorded and analysts are going over it. So even having this hangout, we're putting ourselves on lists and we're putting ourselves out there to be targeted. So I gave up on hiding my beliefs long ago. Yeah.
Which, by the way, if anyone's interested in getting a shirt, you can pick up one of my "Proud to Be on a Watch List" shirts that I sell on Teespring.
Yeah, occasionally I'll throw in an emote just waving at the NSA analyst or whatever.
Yeah,
and it does happen too. Like basically everything that you put on the internet as a security professional, I tell basically like everybody that'll listen, if you're writing it or doing it on the internet, then just assume everybody can see it. The only way to be truly safe is to fully encrypt offline and then transfer and do the opposite on the other side.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree with you there. Like, you can never be truly safe no matter what you are, no matter what precautions you take, you're never truly safe. Like, even if they do what you want them to do, and I completely agree with you on that. Because like I said, if you need someone to work for you, let me know. But like with that, you can't ever have full security. You're always going to have someone who's going to be able to break it, but you can try, and you can try your hardest, and you can try not to let that happen. But at the end of the day, you're not fully ever secure. And that's the thing. That's life, though.
Yeah, that's actually something I've been trying to tell parents recently, is that I think you got to start teaching your kids that we live in a post-privacy world, and that's something that Gen Xers and millennial parents don't necessarily understand, because we grew up with the internet, as the internet grew up next to us. So we've lived in pre and post privacy worlds, but that doesn't exist anymore. And I think we need a culture that understands that privacy doesn't exist anymore. Everything you put on the internet, it's there forever, and who knows who is going to have access to that down the line.
Yeah, I'm kind of resigned to the fact that if they decide that they want me in prison, then they're going to do it. That said, I don't think I'm anywhere, I don't think we're at that point yet, anywhere near it, that at least small fish like myself would be under threat of that. You know, it's all like everyone's saying. All the information's out there. They can easily figure out who I am, even though I use a pen name on the internet. You know, if it comes to it, they have it. They're going to do it. But I don't think I'm at the point where we have to worry about it.
There are groups actually that keep track and share each other's personal information so that if people start disappearing, then they know how to respond accordingly. So I actually don't think we're that far away from a day where, you know, so-called political dissidents, which is what we would be, would start disappearing. And if that ever starts happening to my friends, then, you know, I'll say it outright. People are going to start dying because I won't put up with it. I'm not going to a camp, and you know, if my friends start disappearing, I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's certain. I don't want to sound like I don't think it can't or won't or already hasn't happened. I mean, there's certainly political prisoners right now. But I just it's and that's the thing. I also don't want it to sound like that. Oh, because I don't think it's happening tomorrow or anything. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be careful or it shouldn't be a concern, because it absolutely should be a concern. I mean, they passed laws before several times that you can't criticize the government, especially in war, and they put people in prison for it. So there's a precedent there. And they could very well go and do it again. There's certainly enough people out there that would go right along with it. So,
yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. To get back to what I think it was Rollo you were saying earlier, that if they're going to put us in prison, it's going to happen. And there's too many ways for the government to collect it, like just your data about you, even if you do encrypt a lot of stuff. Unless you have been doing it like your whole life and got like a completely new setup, and you know for sure that like the laptop you have has everything disabled, and you physically remove tracking devices. You know what I mean? Like there has to be so many things you have to do just to even get to that point. And then I'm sure there's, if you slip up just one time, it's done. So I'm kind of resolved to the fact that if the government wants to come after me for my free speech, that's just how it's going to be. But I'm not going to make it easier for a bunch of crazed people online to hunt me down. Like that's not going to happen unless someone legitimately hacks my computer or something. They're not going to find me. I have a lot of disinformation that I seed in things that I write to make it so if you ever looked me up, you're going to come up with some random ass dude who's not me. So
Yeah, and the crazy thing about that is if it's a police agency or a government agency, they're going to see through all your defenses. But you're right though, it'll protect you from the random, nut that's trying to come after you for random reasons.
I invite those random nuts. I mean, bring it on, motherfucker. Cool, you want to kill me? Awesome, you're fulfilling my death wish, by all means. But yeah, like I get what you guys are saying.
Yeah, one of the last hangouts we were in, the guy's like, I don't want to out your location, but I think I went to school near you. And it's like, you can say where I live. I don't care. Like, somebody wants to come and screw with me, that's fine.
Yeah, bring it on. Like, it'll be a good cage match. Hell, we'll film this and upload it too. Like, come on, let's do it. Let's do it.
Well, I think that's as good a note to end on as any. So, everybody here who wants to plug something they do or tell people where they can find them on social media, feel free to do that.
This is Finian again. I'm on Steemit. That's pretty much the only site that I'm on. I've got a Twitter account for the Liberty Professionals business that I have, but the Steemit is just Finian, F-I-N-N-I-A-N, and I welcome any friends interacting with me on there so we can help further individual liberty. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
My name is Idiot's Query. Twitter and Facebook handle is as it's spelt, Idiot's Query. I do a whole bunch of stupid shit. I say whatever the fuck I want. I have no real filter. If I'm wrong, correct me. I'm all about the discourse. It's whatever. My YouTube channel is going to be about trying to educate people on different sorts of things, hopefully bring some critical thought to it. And I invite anyone to follow me if you want, or if you don't, or if you just want to hate on me, cool, go for it. Thank you for having me on the show, man, and I hope everyone has a good night.
No problem.
I'm Rollo McFlugel, and you can catch me at mcflugel.com, also Twitter at Rollo McFlugel, and facebook.com/McFlugel. Also, libertymugs.com, and make sure to use Jeremiah's link because he is a sponsor of us. So, yeah, thanks for having me, and enjoyed the conversation with everyone.
The other people?
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, this is at Truth Force on Steemit. Some of you might already know who I am. I'm one of the co-leaders of the information war effort over there. So make sure you go help fight the information war. We're fighting against propaganda. We're trying to give everybody the truth, show you where the media is lying, show you how there's narratives out there from vested parties on all sides. And we just want to get the truth out there so you can have your freedom and your liberty. And we're a peaceful group. So if you want to check us out, at Information War is the username for that. And I'm at Truth Force.
Yeah, everyone can just follow me on Twitter at Whiskey Rebel 24. And yeah, that's all. Thanks, Jeremiah, for inviting me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you all. It was a good first stream, I think. It had some rocks at the beginning, but should be able to smooth it out next Wednesday. And next Wednesday, it'll be the new news topics that have been hot that whole week. So everyone feel free to tune into that one as well. This will be available on DTube after I'm done with this. And the next one, I'll see if I can finally get my Nginx server streaming so that I can definitely have this streaming to DLive as well. But all of you, I hope you have a great day. Thank you for all the guests that have stuck around. And I will be doing a post show a little bit after this. So feel free to stick around so that we can shoot the shit a little bit and get everything nice and wrapped up. So be well. I will see y'all Sunday and Wednesday.